This meeting of the City of Newberry Planning and Zoning Board has been called to order. Today is Monday, February 1st, 2021. The agenda will be as follows.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. We're starting the meeting in the back, so if you could find a seat, please.
The agenda will be as follows. There will be a call to order, which was this. Approval of the agenda, the Pledge of Allegiance, approval of the minutes. We will review and approve the January 4th, 2021 minutes. Any announcements? These are the short announcements. Old business, which we have none on the agenda. And then under new business, there are 11 items. This is going to be a packed meeting. No, because we start with 2. Oh, wait, maybe it's 12. Never mind. Under new business, we have quite a few items. Item 2 is changing the previously annexed property's future land use from Alachua County Rural to Agricultural City of Newberry Agriculture. Item 3 is rezoning the previously annexed property from Alachua County Rural Agricultural to the City of Newberry Agricultural. Item 4 is a request to reduce the minimum rear setback of Lot 9 in Newberry Hills Phase 2 from 40 foot to 25 foot. Item 5, application for special permit for temporary use to allow 3 two-day outdoor vintage market events during 2021. Item 6 is a request by CHW to change the future land use map classification on about 289 acres from agriculture to planned development. Item 7 is a request from CHW to rezone approximately 289 acres from agricultural to planned development future land use. Item 8, amending regulations to provide for streamlined administrative approval for accessory structures within required rear yard setbacks based on specified criteria. Item 9 is the creation of a city ordinance regulating food trucks. Item 10, creating a city ordinance to allow for neighborhood block parties under specific conditions. Item 11 is to set a date for a workshop to discuss potential revisions to the city landscape requirements. And item 12 is a change in the July meeting date, from Monday, July 5th. So, due to the observation of the July 4th holiday. Then there will be topics for members for discussion, and then we will adjourn. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, move to approve the agenda as written.
As written? Yes. Mr. Thomas, given that we have a very lengthy agenda in front of us, and we usually cut off our meeting at 10, are there items that we can put at the end in case we run out of time?
Madam Chair, there are. Starting with number 8, number 9, number 10 could all be moved to a future date. They're not time sensitive. And so those 3 could be moved forward. 11 and 12 should only take a couple of minutes each.
Madam Chair, I'll amend my motion to cover items up through item 7, and then do 11 and 12, and then move 8, 9, and 10 to the end of the meeting if we have time.
Madam Chair, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion from Mayor Conrad and a second from Board Member Urched. Any discussion on the agenda? Does the public have any discussion on the agenda? We will put up the number on our Zoom screen for those of you following at home. Since this is an item we vote for, the public gets input into these decisions. We are on a 30-second delay from what you see on the Zoom meeting. So we are having a countdown to make sure you have plenty of time to call in. Once you see the screen, you can call the number, and when you get in the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand to let us know you have something to say about the agenda. This is just for the agenda. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair,
There is a Missy Garcia who's raised her hand.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, this is, do you have something to comment on the agenda?
Missy, if you have a comment, you can make a comment now.
By accident.
Dallas, it looks like Ms. Garcia had a question in the chat. I'm not sure if that has anything to do
Okay.
with why she
Is
raised
there
her
anyone
hand.
else?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote for this item. Board Member Johnson,
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock,
Aye.
Mayor Conrad,
Aye.
aye. Board Member Urched.
Aye.
The agenda passes with the revisions 5-0. At this point, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the January 4th, 2021 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Are there any changes to them?
Madam Chair, move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Mayor Conrad and a second by Board Member Urched. Is there any discussion from the board on the minutes? If not, we'll go to the public for their input on the minutes. Once again, there's a 30-second delay between our meeting live and the meeting you are seeing on Zoom. So we're giving you opportunity to call in. If you call a number on your screen, you can call us to comment on the minutes. When you get into the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand so we would know that you have a comment on this item. Are there any public comments?
No, ma'am, Madam Chair.
Anyone in the room? Because I forgot that part earlier. So seeing that there's no further comment, we'll go to a roll call vote. Board Member Johnson? Board Member Woodcock?
Aye.
Mayor Conrad?
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Urched?
Aye.
And the minutes from January 4th, 2021 are approved. Are there any announcements? There's no old business, so we will move on to new business, item number 2. This is a quasi-judicial procedure. So we will go into our process for quasi-judicial, process. This will be for items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. As if new people come into the meeting, we will go through the procedures again. But if not, this will be for all of those items. We'll swear in people by the item that they are here to speak on. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, we do have some people that are outside the room that are going to be here for those items as well that would need to be sworn, and so they'll need to
Okay,
come in.
by item.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
sir. Okay. Let me make a note so I remember too. So with our quasi-judicial procedures, our city attorney will read into the record the ordinance, resolution by title number, or the applicant's name, file number, and subject matter. to be decided if there's no ordinance or resolution. And our city attorney shall explain the rules concerning testimony. The city attorney shall explain the procedure and the order of presentations, which I'm going to do right now. Everyone who's going to be sworn in will be sworn in for their item at that time. For each item, we will also disclose as a board if we've had any ex parte communication. Our presentation order will be as follows. There will be a staff overview. It's brief. Then the applicant will present their application. After the applicant, the staff report and recommendation will follow. If there is a third-party intervener, they will be allowed to speak after that, and then there is public comment. After that, there will be cross-examination by the applicant and the party interveners and the staff. Then the members of the decision-making body will ask questions of the staff, the applicant, any party interveners, and the participants. After that time, final arguments can be made by the applicant and then the staff. And then the city attorney will advise us as to the applicable law and the factual findings. We'll deliberate. So at this time, if the city attorney can read into the record the ordinance for item number 2.
Madam Chair Baker, I'm happy to do so. This is ordinance number 2021-08. This is CPA 21-03, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending the ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment of the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan of 10 or less acres of land under the small scale development amendment procedures established under the small scale amendment provisions of section 163.3187 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change in land use classification from Alachua County rural agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to City of Newberry agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida. Parcel number 02667-007-000, consisting of approximately 5.01 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, the appropriate motion at the appropriate time will be to pass CPA 21-03 as read by title only. You can deny its passage, or you can table it to a date certain in the future. Those are your options, members of the Planning and Zoning Board.
If you are planning to speak at this item, you will be sworn in at this time. And who is swearing them in? Jadine or, okay.
That's what I was going to suggest, Madam Chair, that we swear people in for items 2 and 3 at the same time. So if, let me say the swearing oath, and then if you could raise your right hand and tell me your name for the minutes. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Brian Thomas, I do.
Wendy Kinzer Maxwell, I do.
Janine Miranak, I do. And I do believe Cammie Copeland is on Zoom.
I am.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You're sworn.
Am I supposed to say something now?
So at this time, will any, we will, if any board member has any ex parte communication, Board Member Johnson,
I have none.
Board Member Woodcock,
No.
Mayor Conrad,
No.
Board Member Urched,
No.
and I have none as well. Yes, sir.
Before we begin, if I might ask a clarification question of the city attorney, not on this particular item, but on items further down on the agenda. Does communication on Facebook and social media also count as ex parte?
I would always err on the side of disclosure. So if you've seen something and read something on social media or replied to it especially, then I would disclose, at least generally, that that's happened. And if you can preserve the Facebook page and get that to Amy or Judy or whoever it is at the city that preserves that, we would like to put that in as a part of this meeting as well. That's always the best policy, is to disclose as much as possible.
Thank you.
Sure.
So at this time, the staff can present their overview.
Madam Chair, if I could have the slide presentation up. Okay, the next slide will show you the first one for this application. This is a request to change the future land use. And the next slide, this is going from Alachua County Rural Agriculture to City of Newberry Agriculture. The next slide, you could keep rolling through that. The property was annexed by the City Commission in June of 2020. And the next steps that happen once you go ahead and bring that property into the city is to change the land use, the future land use, and the rezone and the zoning of the property so that it conforms with the City of Newberry's comprehensive plan and regulations. And this is one of those. This was part of a previous group of annexations. So this part of it has to do with a small scale plan amendment. It's under 10 acres. It's a 5-acre parcel. And the Planning and Zoning Board is hearing this to make recommendation to the City Commission. The next slide shows you the overall location of the property down in the southeast part of the city. It's over near the Watermelon Pond area. The next slide gives you the more specific location, being on the north side of Southwest 90th Avenue at the very end, and to the east of Southwest 282nd Street. It is zoned Alachua County Agriculture, now in the City of Newberry, and being requested to go to agriculture for the City of Newberry's designation of the future land use map. The next slide gives you the recommendation of staff, and I'm going through this recommendation. I know that the applicant is here and will make comments, and they are anxious to get the plan amendment and the rezoning completed because they are in the process of doing an addition, and they can't finish without having to pay a $6,000 impact fee to the county unless they get all this taken care of. So they're officially in the city with the correct land use and zoning. So the recommendation of staff is for the Planning and Zoning Board to recommend to the City Commission approval of ordinance 2021-08 for application CPA 21-03.
Thank you very much. At this time, the applicant can make any comments they have. Or
I
present.
don't really have a comment, just that what Planner Kinsner said is correct, that we're trying to annex. We have the people across the street that are also annexed into the City of Newberry, and we'd like to save a little bit of money on our impact fees. And that's all.
Thank you very much. So at this time, the staff can continue with the report and recommendation.
The recommendation as is stands, as I had said, that it is to recommend to the City Commission approval of the ordinance for this change in future land use map from Alachua County to City of Newberry agriculture designation.
There are no third-party interveners, so at this time we will go to public comment. The numbers should be up on your screen for you to call in if you have comments on this item. There is a 30-second delay between our meeting and what is on Zoom. So we're giving you time to call in so you can address your comments or concerns with this item. Once you get in the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand so that you can give us any comments you may have. And has anyone called in? Anyone in the room who wants to make a public comment? So at this time, seeing that there's no public comment, the applicant can cross-examine staff if they choose to.
No.
Staff may cross-examine the applicant if they need to.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
And at this time, does the board have any questions for the applicant or staff?
No.
Madam Chair, recommend the City Commission approve ordinance 2021-08, CPA 2103.
We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think Gavin was trying to as well.
I'm
His light
trying-
lit up, but I couldn't hear him.
Sorry, I'm trying to screenshot what Attorney asked earlier.
Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
So there is a motion by Mayor Conrad, a second by Board Member Urched. Can the city attorney please advise us on the applicable law and factual findings?
Chair Baker, I'm pleased to do so. It's the decision that you make tonight, and I'll be a little bit longer on this one because we'll be talking about the same standard all the way through the number of measures that we have on the agenda, the quasi-judicial hearings that you'll have throughout tonight. It's the same standard. It's substantial and competent evidence. That means you can look at your packet and all of the information and backup that is contained in your packet. That's part of the evidence that you make a decision about. The law says you don't leave your common sense at the door. You've grown up and you know this community very well. You all have lived here for a substantive period of time and been appointed to this board. So you don't leave your history with the community or your background at the door. But you really need to listen to whatever the testimony is this evening that's before you factually. And then you also have to listen to the opinion testimony. And the way the law works is that you as the deciding board need to base opinion testimony from expert witnesses that are testifying before you. And Chair Baker, I'm going to brag on Wendy for just a second, and I'm also going to brag on Brian. They are both AICP, American Institute of Certified Planners, certified, and that's a big deal in the law because they go through not only their discipline of being educated in as a planner, but they also take an examination after they become planners and their educational career is over. They continue on with that education in their work field, and they sit for a test, and it's a difficult test to achieve and pass. But we have two planners that have achieved that designation. So with their background, history, and educational experience that they have, they're considered experts. So when they render an opinion, it is of high regard to the fact finder and the decider of, which is you, the board, of what it is that you're going to do this evening. And if other people, such as myself, if I gave you an opinion on planning, I don't have the kind of education that Wendy does or the background that Brian has or the certification. So that's why opinion testimony from the experts, and I don't know if we'll have other experts that will testify this evening, but they are held to a different standard as far as the opinion testimony. And that's what we mean by substantial and competent evidence. So as you go through this evening, I wanted to lay that out on this first application because that's the standard that you'll be deciding this evening on all of the matters that will be before you this evening. Thank you, Chair Baker.
Thank you very much. At this time, does the board have any further deliberation on the motion that's on the floor? Does the public have any additional comments on the motion that's on the floor? For those of you on Zoom, we're putting the number back on your screen. You're going to get tired of hearing me say this, but there is a 30-second delay between the meeting and what is on Zoom. So we're giving you ample time to call in if you have concerns on these items. The number is on your screen, and when you get into the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand if you have a comment on this matter. Are there any public comments? Okay, so at this time, seeing that there's no public comment, no board comments, we will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Johnson.
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock.
Aye.
Mayor Conrad.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Urched.
Aye.
And the motion passes 5-0. Now moving on to item number 3. Those of you who are sworn in for item 2 are still sworn in for this item since they go together. If you think you need to speak on this and were not sworn in previously, please let us know. Is there anyone? So at this point, if our city attorney will please read the ordinance into the record.
Yes, ma'am. This is ordinance number 2021-09, LDR 21-06. An ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of less than 10 acres pursuant to an application by the city of Newberry, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agricultural A zoning district to city of Newberry Agricultural A zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, tax parcel number 02667-007-000, consisting of approximately 5.01 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2021-09, LDR 21-06, or the board can move to table this to a date certain in the future, or move to deny it at the appropriate time, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Does any board member have any ex parte communication regarding this item? Board Member Johnson?
No.
Board Member Woodcock?
No.
Mayor Conrad?
No.
I don't. Board Member Urched?
No.
So at this point, we will go to the staff overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the rezoning part of the bringing the property into conformance with the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan and zoning regulations. This next slide after this shows you the process. Again, future land use map change that you just heard or recommended to the City Commission. This rezoning is contingent upon approval of that future land use map change. The recommendation here is for the Planning and Zoning Board to hold their public hearing for the property that's located down in the southeast area of the city. And the next slide shows you the next slide gives you the map that's a little closer look. Again, the same location, same property, about 5 acres down off of Southwest 90th Avenue. The next slide gives you the recommendation, and that is that staff recommends that The Planning and Zoning Board recommend to the City Commission approval of the ordinance 2021-09 for application LDR 2106 contingent upon approval of CPA 2103. And that is staff's presentation, and the applicant is here.
Would the applicant wish to say anything at this point?
Not at this time.
Wendy, do you have anything to add?
Just that if you, once you take action on this item, both this rezoning and the comprehensive plan amendment will go to the City Commission for their consideration, their February 8th meeting. And it requires 2 public hearings, so it would be the 8th and the 22nd. And we're trying to do that to accommodate the Copeland's situation with their timeline.
Madam Chair, the first reading will be February 8th, and the second reading will be March 8th, because the second meeting in February is devoted to a joint meeting between the city and the county, so we'll not be accepting other agenda items.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for correcting that.
Thank you very much. There are no interveners present, so we will go to public comment. We will put the number up on the screen for those of you who are watching on Zoom or on YouTube. There's a 30-second delay between the meeting and what you see on YouTube or Zoom. The number is on your screen to call in if you have comments. Once you get into the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand to let us know you have a comment on this issue.
Madam Chair, while we're waiting for the delay,
Yes, sir.
do we have to, can we make the motion and then run both of those delays concurrently? This delay, and then we make the motion, we've got to have another delay while we deliberate.
My guess is, though, the city attorney could probably better answer that, is that because this is a quasi judicial hearing, we have to follow the procedures.
That's how we did it last time. We made the motion early. But we had one delay, and now we're going to have 2. So I don't know. What say you, Mr. Attorney?
Madam Chair, I was having a little hard time hearing what Mayor Conrad said. I just couldn't catch it, but I think the question, I'll try to repeat it, was the question that if we put the motion on the floor and then we have delay for that part of it, and then we call for the vote and there's an additional delay, is that the question?
Yes.
I think you can put the motion on the floor. The statute requires, before any vote is taken, that the public have an opportunity to comment. So as long as we are allowing for the public to provide the comment before we take the vote, that's really the key. So if you call for, when you call for the vote, Bill, I think you've got to allow the citizens to have an opportunity to comment. The safest thing to do is to put the motion on the floor, and before you call for the vote, ask for a citizen comment. So however that happens, that's what you really need to do.
Madam Chair, I don't see any way around getting, I mean, we have the public comment at the beginning, and then we have a motion, and you have public comment at the end. So I know we got the motion in before, back when the decision-making body was asked questions, but there's 2 delays for each quasi-judicial to give the public a chance to comment. You have the one at the beginning, and then you have the one at the end after everybody's listened to all the presentations. I'm not sure that we could expedite. Quasi-judicials are just time-consuming processes. And I believe the commission voted on this quasi-judicial procedure on advice from the attorney. And we have it structured this way specifically to keep us out of trouble.
to make sure that we hit all of the things that we legally have to do inside a quasi judicial. Some of them may seem a little tedious and we want to kind of hurry it up. But the best thing to do is just hurry it up, but not skip a step.
Make a motion now?
So first, we're gonna have the staff and the applicant do any cross-examination that they might need. Does the applicant have any cross-examination?
No.
Does staff have any cross-examination?
No, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir, you can make a motion now.
Recommend the city commission pass ordinance 2109, LDR 2106, contingent upon the approval of CPA 2103.
Second.
We need a second for the motion.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Does the board have any deliberation regarding the motion on the floor? Does the public have any comment on the motion on the floor? While he's doing that, while we are waiting for public comment, the city attorney will advise us on the applicable law and factual findings we will be using for this motion.
Madam Chair, I'll be a lot less long-winded on this one. It'll be the substantial and competent evidence as we talked about earlier.
Are there any public comments, sir? So at this time, the board has had no deliberation or no comments. The public has not commented. We will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Johnson,
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock,
Aye.
Mayor Conrad,
Aye.
aye, Board Member Urched,
Aye.
and the motion passes 5-0. Now we'll move on to item number 4. Has anyone joined us in the interim that needs a refresher on the procedures? If no, then the city attorney, if you will read the ordinance into the record, please.
Yes, ma'am. This is resolution number 2021-03. V as in Victor 21-01, a resolution of the City Commission serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, and for approval of a variance petition as authorized under Section 3.2.5 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for a reduction of the minimum rear yard setback to allow location of a pool and pool deck within the minimum setback area as provided within Section 4.2.4 on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, the appropriate motion at the appropriate time will be to pass resolution number 2021-03, B 2101, or to deny the resolution or to table it to a date certain in the future.
If you're here to speak on this item or wish to speak on this item or think you may wish to speak on this item, if you would come forward and stand so you can be sworn in. If you've been previously sworn in, you do not have to be sworn in again. But this is for anyone who would wish to speak on this variance request.
I believe the applicant is on Zoom. Missy Garcia, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the variance in Newberry Hills?
I do.
Huh? Huh? Who? Oh, I don't know, I've forgotten his name. But if you state your name and say that you will swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
My name is Mark Garcia, and I do.
Okay, thank you.
And now we'll see if any board members have any ex parte communication regarding this item. Board Member Johnson,
No.
Board Member Woodcock,
I'm sorry, it got muted again. No.
Mayor Conrad.
No.
I have none. Board Member Urchin.
No.
Okay, so at this point, we will go to the staff overview on this item.
Madam Chair, this is a request to reduce the minimum rear yard setback as the attorney read through the ordinance. The next slide gives you the overall location of the property within the Newberry Hills Phase 2 subdivision. It is located over on the east side of side of State Road 45. It's nothing like being backwards on that. This is for Lot 9 of Newberry Hills subdivision. It is on the north side of Northwest 24th Avenue, where's the location. The next slide gives you the overview of that property. This is a request by Mark and Melissa Garcia, and they are asking to reduce that rear yard setback from a minimum of 40 feet, which is the requirement for the Newberry Hills Phase 2 platted subdivision, to a minimum of 25 feet. This is in the rear yard, and the 25 feet is what is provided for in the agriculture zoning district, just to give you some reference there. The purpose of the request is to allow for construction of an in-ground pool and decking. The lot itself is about 1 acre in size. And the next slide shows you some more information and talking about the zoning on the subdivision being agriculture. The setbacks are established through the Newberry Hills subdivision plat, but it is zoned agriculture. And when you look at the next slide, what I'm going to show you is the orientation of the 1 acre lot shows the 40 feet. If you go back to that other slide, the actual setbacks, I wanted to point out that the orientation of that 1 acre lot is it's very wide and shallow, whereas many of the other lots in there are longer and deeper. And this makes it a little bit difficult with a wide, shallow lot to have the 40-foot wide setbacks in the front and rear as a part of that, the requirements for Newberry Hills. If you look at the next slide, I have the list of the required setbacks just for reference so that you know that in Newberry Hills, the front and rear setbacks are 40 feet, the side 10. Agriculture zoning district setbacks for other properties that are not platted are front 30 and the side is 25 and the rear is 25. The next slide gives you the aerial view of this property. This shows you some of the lots over off of State Road 45. This one actually fronts onto State Road 45. You can see there to the west of the lot, east of the lot, gosh, I'm sorry. And then you see the more longer, narrow lots on the other side. The next slide gives you the overall plat for Newberry Hills Phase 2. And you can see in yellow, I've got the property designated that is the Garcia's property. And you'll note that all along 45, there's about 9 of those lots that are more wide and shallow. Make it a little bit more difficult for those kinds of uses when you take out the setbacks and right away. The next slide gives you the actual layout of the Garcia's property and where they have the pool planned. You can see the dashed line in the rear of that lot. That is your actual setback of 40 feet. So you can see where to be able to put the pool and the decking is shown there so that they can go closer up to 25 feet from the property line, and then that would work. The next slide shows you the requirements for the variance and the regulations for the city of Newberry, that the Board of Adjustment has this power. The city of Newberry's Planning and Zoning Board makes recommendation to the Board of Adjustment as far as their power of making a variance to the regulations. The next slide gives you the next requirements in our code about conditions and prohibited uses, that you would prescribe the most appropriate conditions and safeguards in conformity with the regulations. And if it causes an issue for the applicant, that's when the variance would be called for, in the sense that if it's more restrictive and those codes are causing it hardship. The next slide talks about that hardship and how that's determined, and the minimum possible is what any variance would be granted for, and making sure that any such granting would be done, it does not end up being contrary to the public interest. In the next slide, the recommendation of staff is for approval, and the applicant is here to make their comments and presentation. And I will go over that recommendation and determination by the city attorney, some comments that we got from the city attorney as well as far as that.
Thank you very much. At this time, applicant, you can give your presentation.
I believe Ms. Kinzer gave the best presentation possible. We simply are seeking the permit to have the pool, in-ground pool construction to begin sometime in April. Based on the site plan that she's provided, the pool shell itself will come well within the requested 25-foot setback.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Madam Chair, if I
we'll go back to the staff for their report recommendation.
All right. The recommendation, if I could pull that slide back up so everybody can see, it is for approval of the resolution and for this application. It would have conditions upon it. The recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend to the City Commission the approval of the resolution with these conditions. The minimum rear yard setback being on the east side of Lot 9, the Garcia's lot, being reduced from 40 to 25 feet to allow construction of a swimming pool and decking, so that the location would not be located any closer than 25 feet from the rear property line. The applicant shall obtain all necessary permits, and the construction, of course, would have to meet all state mandated pool safety requirements. We did check with the city attorney as well, and he did provide information to the applicant that the variance is a mechanism that can be sought for this type of change. In the event that it is approved, they would need to recommended to go ahead and still seek a replat of the lot. Just even though, because that takes longer, the variance process is quicker process to go through, and it is has been reviewed by the city attorney.
Okay, thank you very much. There are no third-party interveners, so we will go to public comment. The number will show up on your screen. If you have comments regarding this item, you can call into the meeting. There is a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you're seeing on Zoom and YouTube. Once you call into the meeting, if you will raise 9 to raise your hand, we will know that you have comments regarding this item. Are there any callers? Is there anyone in the room who would like to make a comment? Does the applicant have any cross-examination for staff?
No.
Does the staff have any cross-examination?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Do the members of the board have any questions for the applicant or staff?
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Just before we make a motion, have we had any requests in this neighborhood of the same nature that we have denied? And did we receive any objection by way of mail from anyone that was notified.
I have not seen, I'm unaware of any request in that area that has been denied for the same type of request for those size lots. And I am unaware of any objecting. I do know people have called in, but once explained what the request was, that they did not have any objection. Could ask Janine also if, in case she has any additional information that I have not heard.
Thank you.
From my recollection, 3 people called in and asked what it meant and what a variance was for that specific letter and property. We did mail to 1,000 feet for that property, and none of them objected.
Thank you.
She said thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? Does the applicant or staff have a final argument?
No, ma'am.
No, staff does not.
Will the city attorney please advise the board on the applicable law and fact findings?
As we've spoke earlier, Madam Chair, it's the substantial and competent evidence standard.
At this time, do I have a motion for this item?
Motion to approve. Item as listed.
Second.
I have a motion to approve by Board Member Urchad and a second by Mayor Marlowe. Mayor Conrad. It's gonna be one of those nights. We will go to public comment. Do you have a comment? Okay. Does any of the board have a comment while we're waiting to see if there's public comment on this? Again, there's a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you're seeing on YouTube and Zoom. Are there any callers? So we will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Johnson,
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock,
Aye.
Mayor Conrad,
Aye.
aye, Board Member Urchad,
Aye.
and the motion passes 5-0. Now we will move to item number 5, the special permit. If you plan to speak on this item, please stand and come to the front, or if you are on Zoom, so that you can be sworn in for this item.
Okay, please raise your right hand. And do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And what's your name? Are you gonna speak? Anybody else wanna speak on this?
I should have the city attorney read this into the record too. I jumped ahead a little bit. Sorry.
Happy to do so, Madam Chair. This is resolution number 2021-03, STUP 21-01. A resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida pursuant to an application STUP 21-01 for a special temporary use permit to allow an outdoor vintage market as authorized under section 14.10 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing approval for a special permit for a temporary use outdoor vintage market within an agricultural A zoning district as provided in section 4.4 of the city's land, of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, on tax parcel numbers 04386-001-000 and 04386-004-000, consisting of approximately 5 acres, repealing resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2021-03, STUP 21-01, as read by title only. And Madam Chair, the board has the ability to deny the resolution or to table it to a date certain in the future.
Do any board members have any ex parte communication on this? Board Member Johnson?
Madam Chair, I have none, but in my packet, I believe the city attorney read a resolution number into the record, but I don't have that. I just have the STUP number 21-01. I'm not sure if that makes a difference in terms of our recording of the meeting.
No, it does not, but to assist our planning and zoning member Johnson, perhaps when we get to the point of the matter being further on the floor, we could put it screen share and put it up for Member Johnson. If I was there, I'd pass you my copy, Gavin. Sorry.
That's okay. I don't need it. I just wanted to make sure it didn't need to be read or written differently.
No.
Janine is saying that it's on page 103 of your packet.
I'll find it. We can move on.
Board Member Woodcock, any ex parte communication?
No.
Mayor Conrad?
No.
I have none. Board Member Urchin?
No.
So at this time, we will go to the staff overview for this item.
Madam Chair, this application is in the next slide, gives you a brief summary, some major points if we just go through those, that it is a quasi-judicial public hearing process. This is for a special permit for a temporary use. It's a request by Gail Hodge, who's an agent for the property owners, which are she and her husband in various company names. It's a special permit that would allow an outdoor vintage market. The property is zoned agriculture. It's a craft vintage type of sales vendors and food and beverage vendors. Its request is for 3 two-day events during this year, 2021. The first one to be held February 19th and 20th. It'd be on Friday and Saturday for any of those 3 events. The property for the location of that event would be the properties right on 2077 West Newberry Road, which is on a southeast corner of Newberry Road and 202nd Street. It is actually the same locations, a portion of that, which the annual cornfield maze, the corn maze event that goes on there. So the property that's actually being used for this event totals about 5 acres. The next slide gives you a few more points that each of those 3 events, as far as the timeline, the events for the public to attend would be from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. as proposed in the application. The vendor setup would start Thursday afternoon and allow for vendor camping at that site through Sunday. The event would be open for vendors at 7 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. And then from 2:30 to 5:30 after the event closes to the public, there'd be vendor breakdown and cleanup. And ultimately on Sunday by noon, the vendors would leave with the camping and cleanup being completed and everyone off the property. The next slide will give you the a few more points that I have. Essentially, in looking at the site plan that was provided and the information from the applicant, it looks like about 70 vendors because there's 4 rows of a maximum of 15 vendors each. You think about it's like the Fall Festival downtown Newberry has had 45, 50 vendors. I think one year they even had about 80 vendors. This would be allow for 4 rows of these 15 vendors each, and then another row of another 10 vendors with larger tents, a food vendor area, an open picnic table area for people to eat purchases that they've made, and portable restrooms, general parking, and vendor RV camping area. The main access being from State Road 26 in compliance with FDOT's requirements as they do for their maze events. Development application review team has reviewed the application, and our conditions for all the different departments are included in the staff's recommended findings and conditions. The applicant would need to coordinate, and they are aware to coordinate with the city's fire department and building department with required permitting and inspections regarding tents and any other facilities out there for fire suppression, fire extinguishers. The next slide will show you the location directly on the south side of Newberry Road. It includes those two parcels that are outlined in blue right there on the corner of 202nd Street. The next slide gives you a couple of the regulations. The reason we require temporary use permit is because those regulations require that the city commission issue for these types of uses that are similar to the commercial circuses and outdoor concerts and carnivals. The next slide, you look at that. We go on and know that prior to granting the temporary use permit, specific items we want to address and look at. The next slide, we'll just keep going through that part. Pretty much that there are requirements for determining whether a temporary use permit should be issued, and looking at the standard of evidence and the kind of findings you'd have to make to approve something like that. And for an example, you know that we have special exceptions and special temporary use permits. This is just for a temporary use, which is normally for something that's less intense and something that's definitely temporary. And the special exception is something that's a permanent use. It tends to go with the land for a much longer period of time. So for example, you might have sketches and drawings of a layout site plan as opposed to an engineered drawing for the site plan. That's an example, the difference of a permanent versus temporary type of use and application. The next slide will give you if you roll through that, the nuisance and hazard is one of the conditions that you look at, the type of finding that you make. The next one, if you could just go ahead and go through those. So go back to right there, so that you're looking at these different kinds of requirements. You've got to look at whether there's a nuisance or hazard, or whether there's traffic issues that are being generated, parking problems. You look at the type of time requirements because you want to set a limit, and this is a temporary use. And then any other appropriate conditions and safeguards that you would want to add as conditions to a permit. The next slide will give you that the requirement for the land development regulations that talk about the different types of findings you make. So in going through those, and that has a reference to an outdoor concert, that is not what we're looking at. We are looking at the outdoor vintage event. You're not the that's a typo. So keep going to the next provisions, you keep going. So I've addressed the different requirements. So in the findings, and these are the staff's recommended findings and conditions that would be included with your resolution. The actual resolution states the name of the applicant and that it's approved. And then you have the attachment that will have these findings and conditions that based on staff presenting to the Planning and Zoning Board and whatever the Planning and Zoning Board decides to recommend. So the findings would be recommended to that there is no nuisance or hazardous feature involved, that you find that the details provided in the application and the site plan include conditions, especially from also the previous maze events. So they have been addressed as far as what's gone on in the past, as well as this current event request. The traffic is also addressed in that excessive vehicular traffic would not be on minor residential roads, and that's based on the conditions in your recommended conditions of the resolution. The next slide goes through each of the other types of findings about parking not being issues not being created, that the facilities will be all on site, and that the specific time period being limited to 3 times for the year, and the specific times during each of those days, and the Friday and Saturday events all for each event as described in the conditions themselves. And then number 5, that the appropriate conditions and safeguards, the other ones that are added to the recommendation, address the other types of issues. And the next slide begins the types of conditions. I'm not sure what we have there. There should be a first condition that is issued to the Hodges for the special permit with the time specified, and that they are based on these conditions that are provided. And then violation of those conditions could be grounds for revocation by the city commission. The primary entrance being at State Road 26. On the next slide, that goes through the permitted uses as allowed, and the types of vendors and the timing of those events and the hours of those. And the next slide walks you through the types of uses that they've contemplated in the application, going through the list of all of those with the food and beverage vendors, the type of facilities that will be on site, addressing safety and emergency operations, that RV spaces will be limited to a minimum of 20 feet separation between the RVs, no open fires, and that drive lanes would be maintained 20 feet minimum at all time. Next slide. Staff is recommending the tent permits. Those are required by law. So that any of the tents that are over, I think 120 square feet in size, have to have a permit and inspection. They do have to have an approved flame retardant label affixed to the tent, and no congregate seating will be allowed in any of the tents. As site plan indicates that the proposed location for the fire extinguishers, that needs to be shown on the site plan. So the next slide goes through and addresses each of these kinds of things with dealing with emergency management, that you have to employ security staffing as needed in preventing overcrowding and not having any issues with parking. The applicant is also being conditioned to strictly comply with health requirements for the restrooms and handling of food. That's a standard requirement, of course, and that they're responsible for coordinating with the vendors to make sure that all of the vendors have the appropriate Newberry issued business tax receipt, and that that receipt would be displayed at each booth. No alcoholic beverages shall be sold without an approved special permit granted by the city of Newberry. The next slide will give you the remaining conditions that the applicants, they agree to adhere to these, that they will get liability insurance if they don't already have it for the event activities, and they'll notify the fire chief and building official of each of the outside vintage market events prior to commencement, noting that the one that's scheduled, we already know the dates for the upcoming one if this is approved. Signage would be limited to the on-site event identifying signs and directional signs, and have to be removed at the end of the event. The next slide gives you the recommendation. Staff is recommending approval of the resolution and application STUP 2101, and that we'd recommend that the city, that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend to the City Commission approval of that, contingent upon compliance with the recommended findings and conditions. And the staff recognizes that the applicant is here and they may have some conditions or other things that they might want to add or comments they'd like to make if they're here.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to give a presentation at this time? Oh, I'm not even on the microphone. And if you could just state your name for the record.
Did a very good job of explaining it, and we were planning on following all the rules, and we already have the special event insurance. So doing the maze, we're kind of used to that stuff. So, and all of the tents, I required that they all have their own fire extinguishers. I don't know that that's a rule, but I think it's a good one. So, any other questions?
Thank you very much. At this time, the staff if they have anything to add to their report and presentation.
That is staff's recommendation. And you've heard the staff's report.
There are no third-party interveners, so right now we will go to public comment. If the public has comments on this item for the special use permit, you can call into the number on the screen. And when you get into the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand to let us know you have comments. There is a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you're seeing on YouTube or Zoom at the moment, so we are giving you ample opportunity to call in. Are there any public in the building who want to have comments while we're waiting for the phone calls? And has anyone called in? So at this time, does the applicant have any cross-examination for staff? Does staff have any cross-examination for the applicant?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
At this point, the board can ask any questions they have of the applicant or staff.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You were first.
Madam Chair, if I may ask, considering that this event, from what I'm looking at, happens to be the Thursday's not too much of a concern, but the Friday at 7 a.m. that is opened up for vendors, I feel like that's a high traffic time because of people going east to Gainesville. Staff, have we seen that the opening to the, I know it's a huge field, is there enough opening to ease the traffic of these vendors coming in, that it's not going to impede on the traffic, the heavy flow of traffic from Newberry at that morning? Because I know the Corps Maze is later in the afternoon and this is an early morning thing.
Based on our discussions, it appears that they do, and looking at the property that they have, they've got room to be able to accommodate that. I know that Mrs. Hodge could probably speak to how they've been handling it with the corn maze, but like you said, this being early in the morning, it is consideration. It is something that we'll make sure that we follow up with them.
Can you come to the, can you come up to the microphone so the people at home can hear you too, please? And it's on the tape.
Okay.
Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
I was just going to say that's only the vendors. So the vendors could come down 202 Street, which is another access road, and they would not be on Highway 26. And there's an easement there. I mean, yes, there's a gate there.
Okay. Yeah, that was my only main concern, is being Friday morning early, the traffic coming in. But if there's enough space for my fear is like if like people are backing up into Newberry Road, but if there's enough space on your property where people can just continuously flow
There
in,
is.
then
That
that's
would not be
perfect.
a
That's just my
concern at
concern.
all. Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor Conrad.
So Wendy had a list of draft conditions. The ordinance mentions of attachment B that's not included on this, but is that draft list of conditions, is that attachment B to the ordinance?
Madam Chair, yes, the attachment B, there's two attachments. It'd be, one would be the site plan, and two would be the list of findings and conditions that are in your packet. So depending upon what you recommend, then that's what gets actually attached to the recommendation to the City Commission. These are staff's recommended findings and conditions for you to consider, and that is what would be attached.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Is this the vintage market I've been seeing on social media?
Yes.
I guess I must have misunderstood. I thought that was kind of like a big garage sale. I was a little curious
It's
to
a
see
little
you
bit
on
more
the
than a
agenda for
garage
tonight,
sale.
so-
Most of the vendors are a 10 by 20 space, so they're not huge tents. They're individual tents. And it's more of a vintage market, which is not exactly a garage sale.
So you're
It's
intending this to grow to something or you think that right off the gate, it's going to be something that's kind of, my question is, I guess from what I saw on Facebook, it didn't seem like something that would require a special exception. But the presentation seems like you guys intend this to be, I want to celebrate if this is more than what I thought it was in my brain. Is that the intention?
That is the intention.
Okay, all right, that's just, I'm more power to you. Great job. I love the idea. I just wanted to know why we were here, because in my mind, it didn't quite get to that level. So I appreciate you guys thinking, y'all always think bigger than I do. So.
Well, hopefully we'll see after the first event. Any other questions?
I'm seeing if anyone on Zoom has questions.
Madam Chair, I have something to add to the conditions, but I think that would be in our next part of the meeting.
I just wanted to thank the Hodge for coming up with this event. I think it's a neat idea to really rally some of the community together. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just so I understand this right, this is really a question for staff. If this is approved, they can have 3, the one that's happening in February, and then they only have to go to the building department and the fire department for the other 2?
That's correct.
That's,
They don't
Madam
have to
Chair,
come
yes.
here for the
It
other
would just
2.
be going for their inspections for the tents and for business tax receipts for any new vendors, but they wouldn't have to come back before any public hearing process or any board.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any final arguments by the staff or the applicant? Seeing none, will the city attorney advise us on the applicable law and the factual finding that
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
using?
It is substantial and competent evidence, yes.
Does the board have any deliberation on this? Gavin?
Madam
Board
Chair.
Member Johnson?
Yes, ma'am. On the list of conditions that staff recommended, item number 16, something that we've asked for from similar special use permit applicants in the last year or two has been that the liability insurance name the city as additionally insured. I'd like to add that into that condition.
Is there any other deliberation on this item? Is there a motion?
I'll motion with staff recommendations as well as Member Johnson's recommendation that the liability insurance also include the city of Newberry as additional insured.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Does the applicant want a chance to respond to that last condition?
Is there a reason for that?
Please come up to the microphone, sorry.
Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, I mean, Johnson can agree. He works in commercial real estate. I do commercial insurance, and it protects the city from any kind of liability that may come from the event because it would happen to be on city.
Okay.
And being in the insurance to add a municipality or anything like that doesn't really. I don't even think there's a cost. There actually might be a blanket on your policy that will cover pretty much. It's just literally verbiage on a certificate saying that the city is covered as an additional insured under your blanket policy.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would say this has been one of the more controversial requests from the city. We've had differing legal opinions about whether this is necessary. I might ask that the P&Z make it a recommendation, put it in, recommend it moving to the board. That would give you a chance to find out from your insurance agent if there's a cost, because I believe there is. Board member Urchin knows more about insurance than I do, but generally speaking, this costs, it depends on the amount of the policy, but it's anywhere from $100 to $200 or $300. So that would give you a chance to kind of look into it. It would give our legal a chance to find out why they didn't pre-put it into the list of conditions ahead of time, because they usually would do that if they thought it was necessary in this situation. And then we would have a better understanding when we go in front of the commission on this. So I would say, put it as part of the recommendation. That would give everybody a little bit of chance to do some research on whether it's really relevant in this situation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, you think?
No, ma'am. I think, but at this time, we're going to go to public comment. Since there is a motion and a second on the floor for this special use permit, after hearing all of the deliberations, if you have additional comments or any comments, you can call in. Once you're in the meeting, please press 9 to raise your hand so we know you have a comment on this item. Once again, there's a delay between our meeting and what you're seeing on YouTube and Zoom, so we're giving you adequate time to call in if you have your concerns. Has anyone called in? Okay, so at this time, I will do a roll call vote. Board Member Johnson.
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock.
Aye.
Mayor Conrad.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Urchad.
Aye.
And the motion passes 5-0. It will be heard by the commission on February 8th, 2021. We're going to take a 3-minute comfort break and we'll return in 3 minutes.
Oh, we're in a break, which only means being there longer, right? I said that only means being there longer. Oh, thanks, Wendy.
Board Member Woodcock, we need a historian here. Could you identify the young lady on the screen? Could you look? You're muted, Miss Linda. Don't get mad at the phone now. It didn't mute itself.
Now, I got it now. I want to know why that is there.
We're on break. Just wait till the next one comes up.
Oh, okay, I can't wait. But let me tell you something. After we just went through all this with Hodge Farms and that antique show thing, and all of these things, issues and rules and laws, in 1967, 68, the Lions Club had sponsored a circus to come to town. They were going to set up down there where the Methodist Church is now, but it rained, and you know that's a little low. So they brought the circus out to our farm, and so we had a circus, and I don't think that there was anybody that had to go to the city to get permission to, one, bring the circus into town, or two, to move the circus. So 40, well, how many years ago was that? I don't even want to know, do I? I just thought it was funny.
Has everyone
Gavin,
returned?
are you laughing, Gavin?
I'm just trying to imagine if my grandfather was the ringmaster at that circus or if he was passing out popcorn.
Well, you know, he and my dad were such good friends. I'm sure he probably had something to do with it.
I'm sure he
I
did.
would assume, yes. But I do know they brought Miss Eva and her elephants, because Kathy was very excited about having her own elephant, because of course, you know, her granddaddy told her that he had bought her a circus. So she thought it was her very own private showing.
Funny.
Okay, so since we've all returned from our break, we're going to go through the quasi-judicial procedure again, since it's been a couple of items.
Oh.
Our process for the quasi judicial proceedings are the city attorney shall read into the record the ordinance. Resolution by title and number, or the applicant's name, file number, and the subject matter to be decided if there's no ordinance or resolution. And then the city attorney is going to explain the rules concerning testimony, primarily that the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision. The city attorney shall, well, I will explain the procedure and the order of presentations, which is what I'm going over now, and have been directing as people get up to stand and speak. The applicant, staff, and all participants requesting to speak may be collectively sworn in at the beginning of the hearing, and we'll have a separate swearing in for the people for this item, and for 6 and 7, since they're tied together. And then the board will disclose any ex parte communications. Our presentation order is there's a staff overview, then the applicant will present their application. Then the staff will give us a report and a recommendation. If there's a third-party intervener, they will be allowed to speak, and then there will be public comment. The applicant may then cross-examine, the interveners, if there are any, may cross-examine, and staff may cross-examine. Then members of the decision-making body will ask questions of the staff, the applicant, and the participants. Final argument may be made by the applicant and then staff, and the city attorney will advise us as to the applicable law and fact findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. The board will deliberate. There will be a motion and public comment, and then we will vote. So if the city attorney could read this into the record for item number 6, please.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to do so. This will be ordinance number 2021-06, CPA 21-02, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the city of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.3184, 2 and 3 of the Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to planned development on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, tax parcels numbers 01927-000-000, 01932-000-000, 01933-002-002-000, consisting of approximately 289 acres of land, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate measure, Madam Chair, and the motion will be to approve ordinance number 2021-06, CPA 21-02 at the appropriate time, or to table the matter to a date certain in the future, or to deny the ordinance that's before you.
Thank you very much. At this time, if you are planning to speak on this item, or think you may want to speak on this item, and have not been previously sworn in, you will be sworn in right now by Ms. Janine.
Please raise your right hand if you're in the room. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I've got your name. Is there anybody who wants to be sworn in?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to be sworn in, please raise your hand in the Zoom feature. Madam Chair, nobody's raised their hand.
At this time, the board will disclose any ex parte communications. Board Member Johnson.
No.
Board Member Woodcock.
Yeah, yes. Madam Chair, can you hear, am I muted?
I can hear you.
We can hear you, Member Woodcock.
Okay, that's good because I don't know where my button is anymore. I have to, I think I'm going to just recuse myself. I have talked with many people about this next issue that we're looking at. The property abuts to my property. I have spoken to the owners of the property, to the contractors. So I'm out of the loop on this one.
Could the city attorney advise us on that, please?
Actually, Madam Chair, I spoke to Member Woodcock earlier today, and she indicated that she felt that, which is, I believe, her prerogative, if she believes that the property is butting to her property, and she believes it would be appropriate for her to recuse herself. That's a decision she gets to make. She gets to file her Form 4 conflict of interest. She'll do that as soon as possible after the meeting. The additional thing that she indicated to me was that there's a home located on the property where she's actively been involved in attempting to gain the property and that home on the historic register. Is probably built during the WPA era. And so she's had some involvement with that process as well. All of those things taken together, she felt it would be appropriate for her to recuse herself from voting, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if we had to get you to actually like formally say that it was okay or not. So, Mayor Conrad, Board Member Urched.
Yes, and at the advice from legal earlier, on a Facebook forum that I am an admin on, I had several discussions in general public trying to answer questions of the concern that came to the board today. But I have no special interest, and I've actually gone ahead and screenshotted all those word for word, screenshotted that whole form, that whole thread, and already emailed it to the city as advised by legal.
And I will disclose that I saw the discussion on Facebook. I did not participate in the discussion. I have had a few members of the public reach out to me about it. At the time, I only knew that this was coming in front of us because of Facebook. It has not influenced my decision-making ability, but I am disclosing it to be safe. So at this time, we will have a staff overview.
Madam Chair, this request is by the agent CHW for all of the property owners for 289 acres to change the future land use from agriculture to planned development. The next slide talks about the process. This is called a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment because it's over 10 acres in size. And what that means is after the City Commission holds a first public hearing based on the recommendation of Planning and Zoning Board, the item would be sent to the State of Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for their review and for other state agencies to review. And then we get their comments back. Usually takes an extra 30 days or so. And once that comes back, the second public hearing may be held by the City Commission to make a final decision. The next slide shows you the overall location within the city of Newberry, being on the south side of Newberry Road. On the next slide, let me look at the closer look. Okay, so the information that's presented by the applicant, if we could go back to that other slide, this particular location it's within the urban service area of the City of Newberry's comprehensive plan, but it's outside of the economic development overlay and transportation enhancement overlay. And what that means is under our comprehensive plan that you can still apply to change the future land use to plan development, that's an appropriate land use category to choose for that location. That in this case, the proposal is for a mix of commercial and residential that would complement each other in that area. So at this point, I'd just like to turn it over to the applicant to go ahead and make their presentation. They have quite an extensive analysis to go through.
Thank you very much. So at this time, if the applicant will begin their presentation.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I have 30 seconds? Because I saw some confused looks on the face when we were doing ex parte. I just want to explain so everyone knows what that process was. When this body sits as a quasi judicial, it means that they're no longer a legislative body. They're actually sitting as a panel of judges. And that's why we've been going through this process and reminding ourselves that we have to listen to experts and testimony. So ex parte is a Latin term. I'm going to muff it, but it means conversations are evidence these guys might have gotten outside of this room, and they're only supposed to listen to what they hear from experts today. So when they were disclosing that ex parte, they were saying, I've had another conversation, and then they were giving reasons why that conversation would or wouldn't influence their decision now. So I just wanted to take a moment to explain what was going on there, because I saw, and I have that same confusion sometimes. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that. That's like ex parte. It's outside the party. You heard it somewhere else, but tonight you have to listen to this, and hopefully this gentleman won't be too long-winded, because Brian said he wants to get through the whole agenda tonight. I always like to start by saying I'm glad to be here, and especially glad because I think this is the first time I've had an in-person meeting in about a year almost, and so it's nice to be here in Newberry. And we had an opportunity during your earlier agenda items to talk to some of the folks that are here tonight to express their concerns and their thoughts about change in Newberry. And it's always, it always hits home. You know, I was sitting back here listening to some of the earlier items, and I was thinking about 20 years ago when I stood here for Ronnie Rowland, or Rufus, and we were going to do Newtown 1894. And it was a subdivision that was changed. It was different. It was the first time that we were doing really a plan development, and the first time in my career at CHW, long before becoming one of the owners there. And it's hard. Change is different. But I also think back, preceding that, about 30 years ago, as a young first-time planner working at the Regional Planning Council, and I came out here and got my special class at Pickett's one evening, and Adrian said, gosh, you look a little peaked there, so let me make you some popcorn and give you a root beer to boost you up. And I still see Adrian out there. And I see Frank, and I come out here quite frequently, and I shop here, and there's a lot of things that I do in the city, and change occurs, and then change doesn't occur. Some of the things that we want to see in our communities are things that benefit our communities, and every time we have to look at those kind of through a lens that has a lot of optics to it, of what kind of change is being proposed. And so we're here tonight to talk about an active retirement community, an age-restricted community coming to the city of Newberry. You know, I was explaining out on the porch here that Alachua's got its moniker, the Good Life community. Well, Newberry's got its moniker too. It's a special place, and you know, we believe in it, and we really want to see the right things happen here. We've worked quite frequently with Mr. Norfleet on the things that he's done here, and I don't think those changes have been bad. What we're proposing is a large-scale land use amendment, and that's anything over 10 acres. And this proposes to bring citizens, people that are leaving South Florida, people that are moving from the north, that want to be in our community. And our community is bigger sometimes than just the land that we call downtown. It's part of the community that took down to the VA hospital in Gainesville, or North Florida Regional Medical Center, or UF Health, because people want to come here for that same quality of life we all enjoy. So the request is to take a portion of land in the city that is fairly close to the downtown inside the urban services area and change it from agriculture to planned development. And that planned development will have two things in it. It will have residential land for single-family detached homes to be built on a slab with wood frame, just like we always see here. This is not mobile homes. This is not manufactured homes. There may be some modular components because that's the way the building industry is going. But we are looking at this as a planned development of single-family homes designed for empty nesters. And I hate to say 55 and above, I would qualify for that now. I could be one of those people there. There's a companion rezoning, which would take this to planned development. And what that really does is it helps establish the phasing and the time that this project will take. And that's one of the things I really wanted to start off when talking about the project. We are talking about 20 years of development, 2 decades of time to take and have these seniors or people in my class, 55 and above, move to the community and become citizens of our town here. The intent with this and why we're behind this application is because we're not proposing to build a villages here. We're not proposing to build an Oakmont here or a subdivision that would put strains on really the road system or the school system. When people come to town and they're 55 and above, what they bring is disposable income. They bring the ability to support restaurants, auto repair shops, appliance repair, and they also bring another need, which is bringing healthcare, doctors, dentists, and specialists to a community. While a lot will, of course, need advanced care as they get older, it helps the community build its economic base without placing an undue hardship on our roadway system. The plan is designed to have a complete internal sidewalk system, as well as internal trails for recreation. Out of the 289 acres proposed, approximately 21, excuse me, 21% of the land will be left untouched, and it'll be in the form of green space and public areas for the residents to have passive recreation, like watching for birds or going outside for strolls or, doing things that are not active. And then some of it will be for active recreation, things like tennis, swimming, pickleball, which is that little kind of hybrid badminton tennis thing that seems to be pretty popular in the age cohort. But we also want to have, in creating a complete neighborhood, a small portion of land right on Newberry Road at the frontage that will, with time, have some neighborhood supportive commercial at the frontage. So spatially, if you lived here, while you could walk, ride your bike, ride around in a golf cart, if you wanted to go shopping, you wouldn't need to get on Newberry Road per se. You might have some of the things that you need, whether it be a grocer or a pharmacy or a lawyer or a dentist or a doctor, right at the front. Something about the scale of where Fresh Market is in Gainesville. You know how you've got a grocer in the center, a Northwest Seafood Grill, and then you've got a bakery and a pet shop and a place to get your hair cut and those sorts of services. Something small like that, which is what we call neighborhood scale commercial uses for the community. And by placing it on Newberry Road, it's open to everybody. So if another grocer chose to locate there, that would give the community another added boost in economic development and job creation. This is the timeline of the project up to date. Last year, we came out to the Little Red Schoolhouse, met with the city manager, planning and public works staff, and talked about the practicality of this location for the connection of potable water, sanitary sewer, enhancements to the roadway network, and saw if there was really a possibility for the fit. We were encouraged by our interactions with Mr. New and Brian and Wendy and others, and decided to carry forward and actually make application to the city of Newberry. So with that in mind, this process takes a while. And as staff read into you, this application, while it would be reviewed locally here, this is also the type of application that would go to the state of Florida. Knowing that, we've already been in contact with and are working with the Florida Department of Transportation, because today and into the future, those trips will enter Newberry Road. So we want to have a good solution for creating a safe traffic operational condition there. And ultimately, we feel that this project would probably necessitate a traffic light somewhere just east of Hitchcock's there, so that there would be safe motion onto and off of Newberry Road. But that would probably come in latter phases. This is the context map, and looking over your shoulders here for most of you, you can see that green zigzag line that is the city of limits, the city of Newberry's limits that kind of meander around the east side of the community. This project and this land area is immediately proximate to the downtown core of Newberry, right there off of Dr. Ellis Road. So it's inside the urban services area where water and sewer currently exist. This is an enlargement of the property. And part of the neat part about this is when we do projects, we get the opportunity to talk to a lot of people. And we were encouraged to talk to Ms. Woodcock because she lives next door and she's also on your planning and zoning board. She was kind enough to put us in touch with Mary Jane James here, who actually grew up on the property. And so she was kind enough to take Ryan and I and run us around the property and then through the house. And we got to see everything from, you know, the first stones that were laid there to the places where every year the kids' heights would be written on the door frame in that house. And so out of that specialness and that ability to work with folks like Ms. Woodcock and obviously Ms. James, one of the things that we wanted to do, and this was also at the urgence of your manager, was look at how robust that house is that's historically set right there near the front of the property. And talking to our clients, what we decided would be best for that home is actually to turn it into an activity type center out of one of the many activity centers that would be in the overall development. So while you may have a big gymnasium or a place where there's a workout room and a pool and stuff, that would make a great place for having like a crafts room or a card room or a place where you could just go sit out on the porch because it sits up on a high knoll sort of the land and look out over the abundance of the property. So we've designed our PD master plan to incorporate preservation of that property and looked at how to take that home and transition it, because we feel, and kind of gives me a chill honestly to say it, that helps tell the story of the why. You're not just going in there and obliterating the dirt to come in and pave it with houses. You're creating a place that over 20 years will evolve and grow as it helps the city grow and as the city grows naturally. So that's what it looks like on a land use map. It's a mint green color called agriculture, but as you can see, it is adjacent to lands that are commercial across the street, and that yellow pattern that's immediately to the west, that's residential land use. So we would like to do a logical extension of the residential land use pattern in the city and place residential land use upon that, but do it through the right way by doing it through a planned development. Instead of just saying straight land use of 4 units an acre and straight zoning on here, we want to create a phased, multi-year, multi-phase plan so that it works in concert as the city grows, as the water supply grows, as the sewer capacity grows. This is time and it's strategic growth management. The zoning change would be a similar item. That mint color green is agriculture. It would go to PD. So your planned use development and your planned development are in lockstep. Brian, staff at Public Works, the manager, and you all know how time moves along in an application like this. It allows us also the ability to coordinate with the Florida Department of Transportation and others as other businesses work in concert with this. So those map areas ultimately translate to more of a zonal map like you see here. And I don't know if the laser probably won't work on the screen because screens absorb them pretty well. But if you see that gray line that runs through the center of the property, thank you to whomever is doing that, Dallas. That would be the primary connector road from Newberry Road at the north, where Dallas is running south, all the way down to 15th. So a part of this plan, as the phases would mature, is the modification and paving and formalization of 15th as a road, because today it's got chip seal on it. Cold rolled pieces of old asphalt that hold together pretty well, but not great. And so one of our first discussions with Mr. New when we were sitting down at the Little Red Schoolhouse was, if you want to do something like this, you've got to make this transportation system work. So creating a connector road from Newberry Road through the project to 15th would help bring that additional connection to Newberry. And it would allow folks that are wanting to get like from Newberry Oaks there and from like the middle school, if they need to get to Newberry Road, maybe they don't have to go up to the traffic light. They come through this area. So it's starting to build a transportation network throughout the community. And you can see along the entire edge of the property, consistent with your comprehensive plan and your land development code, we have put arrows on all of those boundaries so that if other properties in the future wanted to develop, there's the opportunity for interconnectivity for roads and sidewalks around the perimeter edge so that there is connectivity as opposed to disconnection in the development. Uh-oh. There we go. So the green areas that you see, the green areas represent initially those areas that have been identified for stormwater management because they are the lower topography of the site. That's where water would naturally drain. And we would interconnect those areas around the project site with a series of trails and walking paths for recreational purposes. The blue lines represent our first concept pass at a street network that would build off of the main road connection from Newberry Road to 15th. This map shows you where the existing water and sewer are located on Dock Corrales, and there's also water and sewer on Newberry Road or State Road 26. And we envision that we would have an interconnection because you don't like to run water and sewer dead end into a property. You like to make loop connections through there. That way you improve the volume of water as well as the pressure of water for residents in their showers and fire protection and fire hydrants and so forth. So we envision that this would have a loop connection, and ultimately the loop connection of the utilities would go from Newberry Road down to 15th and then back in. So you had multiple points of connection for a balanced volume and pressure of water throughout the system. So with that, I would like to conclude my portion of the presentation. I think that there's a very strong argument for looking at a strategic plan of planned growth in Newberry. This is a 20-year time frame, and it is proximate and adjacent to the existing development patterns and existing utilities in Newberry. It brings a diversity in housing stock. I know a lot of young families when I drive through Country Way and the neighborhoods out here that Mr. Wiesman has curated and Mr. Rowland's subdivision here and obviously Mr. Norfleet subdivision. I see a lot of Gainesville police cars or ASO or folks that I know that they live in Newberry, but they work in Gainesville. This is another type of housing that would allow people as they're transitioning away from those bigger homes and bigger lots and yard work to say, I'm an empty nester and I like the quality of life living in a smaller community. I want that for myself, and I'm still close enough to drive to the hospital to work or back into the university to teach or elsewhere. But being close to the community, an important component of a age-restricted community is it brings a lot of the scale of economy to the city. It brings people that have wallets and all the time in the world. And it doesn't put kids in the school system, and it doesn't put a lot of strain on the roads if you have a well-designed community, because a lot of the amenities that they want to do and things that they want to do exist in the community itself. I'm happy to answer any questions. You gave a great outline, Madam Chair, of the way your presentation goes tonight. Myself, I'll be here until the end of this evening, as will Mr. Ryan Thompson. He's a professional planner also, been with our firm for a number of years and sat in this room with me many, many times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll do questions in a little bit, actually. Right now, we'll go back to the staff report and recommendation.
Madam Chair, the recommendation of staff based on the justification report that the applicant has prepared that goes through all of the future land use map change, the plans and policies that with which it's consistent, the level of service requirements, the urban sprawl analysis, all of that, staff finds that the proposed future land use map change is consistent with the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan, and therefore we recommend that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend to the City Commission approval of Ordinance 2021-06. for application CPA 21-02 to change the future land use from agriculture to planned development.
Thank you very much. There is no third-party intervener. So now we will go to public comment. There will be another chance for public comment later on as well. Public comments will be kept at 3 minutes. We've put the number on YouTube, Zoom, so you can call in. If there's anyone in the room right now who wishes to come speak, you can come to the microphone and say your name for the record. Remember, there's a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you're seeing on YouTube and Zoom. Come to the microphone, just state your name for the record, and then you may speak freely. My name's Christy Munden. I grew up in Newberry, and I lived in Newberry my whole life, except for a few years when I married my husband. And then some land came up for sale, and I was able to purchase it, and it's going to be affected by all this. I'm like totally shocked that this may happen, but I live by a lot of my family, so it's like I know I could just sell my land and move on, but I just wanted to oppose this because it's quite a large thing that's going to happen, and it's going to affect a lot of people. If you look at the map, there's a lot of people that live around there that have 6 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres, and now they're going to be, you know, a retirement home per se that's going to be behind them now, and it's going to affect the way we live no matter what anybody says. You know, we're used to riding 4-wheelers, motorcycles. Any given Saturday or weekday, you hear guns go off repeatedly, but that's why people moved out to this land to live in the country. And for it to get developed like that just tears my heart up. You know, my family's from here, you know, my great-grandma, my great-great-grandma, hundreds of years, and it just, so I just wanted to come up here and oppose it because it is going to affect a lot of people. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the room who would like to come up and give a public comment? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have David Dale. Mr. Dale, you can unmute yourself and make your comment.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is David Dale. I live on 226th Street, which is adjacent to this proposed development. My question is, have plans been developed or preliminary plans for what sort of buffer there will be between the development and existing properties? Will it be fence or wall or just vegetative buffering? Considering both flow of people and, you know, animals, pets, wildlife, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Michelle Sykes.
Hang on one second. Point of order.
Yes, sir.
I believe people that call in have to be sworn.
Scott, does public comment, does the public have to be sworn in to make a public comment? Or was those asking to give testimony?
I would suggest, Madam Chair, that we have everyone sworn in as they come to the microphone, or if they're recognized on the, I'm sorry, I'm getting a ton of feedback. I'm going to try to turn mine down and see if that helps. If they're recognized on Zoom, that we also have them sworn in.
Okay, that was, oops, sorry, my mistake, because I was not aware for public comment, they needed to be sworn in. So as people call in on Zoom or come up to the microphone, we will have them sworn in.
Okay. And Christy Munden swore in when we were standing in the room, just so you know. David Dale, do you swear that you told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, Michelle Sightmere, is that right? I'll get the spelling off the screen. Do you swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, are there any other public?
No, there's no other public with their hand raised.
You can go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. So I also live adjacent to the property. My house is quite close to the property line, in fact. What input will we be able to have on how this is developed, on where the buffer zones are placed? You know, there's some beautiful large oak trees there on the property. Will those be preserved? What about, you know, light pollution and from the street lights? What are the impacts this is going to have on us as residents? And what input will we be able to have onto how this goes? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment, either in the room or on Zoom?
There is no other virtual public comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone in the room care to public comment? Okay, at this time, the applicant may cross-examine if they so wish to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm absolutely not going to cross-examine anybody because I trust everybody to be honest about their feelings. And what I would say in response to Ms. Michelle's, I don't want to mess up her last name. Pardon? Okay. Ms. Michelle and Ms. London, who was here when we spoke on the porch, what we like to try to do, obviously when we have a bubble plan that outlines land areas, you can see where land would be generally placed for stormwater management basins because that will go to the lower, kind of like the valleys in the land. And as I told Ms. London out on the front porch here, we're happy to do site visits because if there are things like phenomenal oak trees or good tree lines that run along fences, it would be our pleasure to meet them at the property to talk about what they might expect to see and do our best to say, well, we'll make the buffers thicker here, or if there are areas that are more suitable for fencing versus vegetative buffers. We're at the early planning stages in this, and we're more than happy to meet with folks to ensure that the right type of buffers get in the right type of places. You know, we don't ever want to do a poor job, so we believe our job is best done when we work with the community to understand their concerns and try to address those on a kind of like case-by-case basis.
Does the staff wish to cross-examine at this time?
No, Madam Chair.
Does the board have any questions for the staff or the applicant at this time?
Madam Chair.
Yes, board member Urchet.
Taking into account some public comment, I have a question for the applicant. One thing that Michelle brought up, I know that there's, I guess with new real estate around, she also brought up, wasn't just a concern of a buffer zone, because I do agree with the buffer zone. There is some, you know, to give that privacy still to those who choose to live in a country setting. But also, I want to address the light pollution. Is there something or anything to that extent that she had brought up that I just want to see if we can overcome that? Because I'm pretty confident, even me living in a subdivision that's in Newberry, but that's one thing I do enjoy about living out here, is being able to look out in the stars, being able to see the beauty of the world as it is. And I'm pretty confident if I had the privilege to live in farmland or in the country per se, light pollution being dimmed, how will that impact the surrounding areas?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And there is absolutely, I'm glad you brought that point up. There's absolutely a way to address that. When we are further down the road, and it would be a condition that you might offer into the zoning application, would be the assurances of building to like dark sky standards. And what that means is that I grew up on a lot of farmland up in Michigan before I moved to Florida in '76. And so I remember those big mercury lamps out there on the pole that cast a lot of light. Our standards today include something called the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, or NEMA 4, for making what are called full cutoff luminaires. And instead of having the light bulb hang beneath the box, the way that light fixtures are designed when you're working for dark sky standards are you put the light up in the fixture, and the fixtures have apertures that close down and allow you to focus the light where it needs to be, like along a sidewalk or a driveway or in an intersection, and not into the night sky. And so one of the things that I think that you would want to consider in the zoning for this is that the development, to the maximum extent practicable, and I say that word practical because there are times where safety at intersections in the Florida Department of Transportation will kind of tell you, you're going to have to put a certain amount of light here. But when you get back into the residential community, that your street lights are downward facing lights that focus the light on walking paths or on intersections, and don't exacerbate or create light bloom into the sky. And that's a pretty modern concern. And I wholly agree with you because I have friends and relatives that live in the rural communities like High Springs. And one of the things I like is when you get out there, you don't have that big ball of light you do in Gainesville coming off the university and the hospitals and that. You get to look and you can go, gosh, I can look a long way into that night, that dark sky. So that is something that we can absolutely do, and just done through good engineering and good product placement in choice of street lights, street lamps, and then lights on buildings too, and you know, the houses, so that they're facing down, not pointing up at the sky.
Madam Chair, I also wanted to address, it's like you might as well just hang out up here.
I think you had told somebody else, just hang out for a while till.
If I could find my notes. I made a note because on one of your site plans that you had, there was it was one with like, it's highlighted yellow with a lot of black dots, and it said something about transportation. And it was just like a straight line to the back. Here we go. Page 187 shows transportation enhancement project area. Is that anything related to what you guys, or is that something that's just on the city?
If you would flip that around. Yeah, that would be, yeah, that's
Okay.
it. Brian, you want to talk about the TEP? Oh. Oh.
So my concern is how will that impact the traffic patterns on 15th? We already have, I guess this is more directed to staff, and my apologies on that. How will this impact our traffic patterns as we see fit on 15th with the current traffic that we have? I understand that this is over a course of 20 years, but we already see a massive headache on 15 as we speak with the chip and seal, the road being too narrow, whatnot. What's the plan for this?
Wendy, did you want to address, or would you like me to talk to that?
Go ahead. That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Basically, as far as 15th Avenue goes, at a later stage of the development, when the need arises to connect to 15th Avenue to provide additional transportation options and connectivity, it would have to be improved to our city standard. It would not be allowed to remain as a narrow chip sealed road. Chip sealing isn't actually considered paving. It's just in sort of an elevated grade. And so it would have to ultimately at that point be widened and developed to actual road standards, acceptable city standards, which are FDOT standards. So that would handle the as far as 15th Avenue. I don't know if that answers the question, but they would not be able to make that connection under the with the road being at the stage it is now, in the condition it is now. It would have to be improved to regular city street standards.
All right, and then my question to staff, Madam Chair, is what what's the limit that the city's looking for before they start working on this? Because to me, that sounds like, let's go ahead and have them build, and then when it becomes a problem, we'll fix it, versus being proactive, as Newberry is proactive in fixing the problem before it starts. So my question to staff is, what's our threshold cutoff here? Like, do we wait until there's 100 homes? Do we wait until there's 20 homes? Do we wait until there's 400 homes?
Madam Chair, the threshold or the trigger is going to be when the development desires access to 15th. The improvements that FDOT is going to require to State Road 26 will have to be made initially. The improvements to 15th would only be required once the developer requests access to 15th to continue out the development of that connector road. And so to the extent that they don't access 15th, they wouldn't be required to improve 15th. But when the correct phase comes in where they are looking to provide that additional means of access, then they would be required to do the improvements to 15th to provide that access.
Madam Chair, I can add to that a little bit to Planning and Zoning Board Member Eckerd's question. I think the planning of that starts at the day we have the pre-application or the first meeting. And when we sat down at the Little Red Schoolhouse with Mike and Brian, they were outlining to us other properties along Dock Corrales that, but for access, can't develop. When we looked at 15th, we know that 15th's right of way or the physical land area that the city has to actually create improvements is very uneven through there. Some points it has pinch points in it. And so even from that first day when we sat down talking to Mr. New and Brian, we realized that the Futches live on the south side of that. And so that planning actually starts the first day that we have our pre-application meeting per se. I've worked with Steve and Juanita before. They've come into our office and looked at what ultimately plans would be for their property. So that coordination starts either with us, giving right of way to make 15th a unified width through there so that it's safe and it misses and preserves the trees. And then also working with the adjacent property owner. And should this application move forward, what we will be doing is we will contact those landowners in concert with the city to assure that adequate right of way exists. So we're not trying to do something too late. We're planning for it here in 2021. So when it's needed in 2027 or 2028, that the plan is there and we've got things lined up and the land is there to do it, which involves in a lot of cases us donating right of way on our side to make sure that there's adequate width there. So that starts very early on in the process.
Well, I had one question for the applicant. Can you talk to us a little bit about the 55 plus? We know in concept this is a senior living. What maintains that? Is that an HOA? Is that federally funded status? How do we know in 20 years someone says, well, the senior thing didn't work out and we're going to have to start bringing in young families, and now it becomes a burden on the school system?
Well, it hits me real hard because I got another AARP card in the mail the other day when I was picking up the mail. And what restricts that in perpetuity is really the deed. When this land is set up, you get your land use and you get your zoning. Your zoning is really the controlling entitlement on there. Then when that land is platted, it can have a deed restriction in it. So it's not looking to a homeowners association, which may take a 5/7 vote one night to say, let's just open it up to everybody. But actually that deed restriction becomes a covenant that runs with the land. So even if somebody said, well, I want to come in here and I want to build 20 of the houses, but I want them for starter homes for people, you can't do it. So it leaves it out of others' hands, and it doesn't put it back on this dais here for the city commission to say, well, we thought this was this way and it's changing. So it is a covenant in there and recorded by deed. Yeah. So that gives you that long time assurance.
Madam Chair, Mayor, are you? To add to Mayor Marlowe's concern, I have children in the school system. We already have a severely overpopulated issue going on in Newberry that the school board, God willing, will be helping. However, this being spread out, you mentioned something, not having a burden to the schools because it is a 55 and over community. What I understand the deed says that a 55 and over have to be living there. But is there anything that can prevent or stop someone saying, well, grandma and grandpa live in that 55 and over community. Let's say that Joe Smo is going to school there. We'll zone him over there.
Yeah.
Is there anything to prevent that from happening?
Yes.
And it's something we can write in the deed as well.
Yes, Madam Chair, there is something that you can do in there. In an age-restricted community, you can put in there the restrictions that would say, you know, that you cannot have a child or a person, a minor that's under the age of 18 there, or in any certain age bracket for more than a 2-week period. So the, you know, grandkids come down for the Christmas break, but you're not having grandparents taking on 8 or 10 kids, you know, in a cul-de-sac per se. And you're restricting the ability to have school-age kids or minors be in a home for any longer period of time. Yeah, there's definitely ways to do that. Kind of outside the purview of a comp plan amendment and a rezoning, but absolutely, and that's the direction. I mean, we talked about that early on too, because there are people like to cheat. I mean, I lived in Port St. Lucie when I was in high school, and you know, retirement community, but I had a few friends who lived with, you know, elders, but they had to like move every 3 months because they couldn't stay in one place. Yeah, you can make sure that stuff doesn't happen. Good choice.
I'm sorry, I got one more.
Go ahead.
The other concern is you mentioned this is not the villages. What has CHW done in research, or has staff helped in research in the sense of other communities that don't want to turn into the villages? Because that's another fear is now Newberry has become the villages. And what's in place, what research has been done to show that this is going to be different, and what's going to make that different than being a retirement community like the villages have blown up to be in Central Florida?
Madam Chair, I don't, no, it's a really good question. I don't know that really in, you know, the United States of America, which is a free democracy to buy and sell land, that, you know, somebody couldn't do that. It's tough to say, Madam Chair. I don't think that there's really any research that says any one community couldn't try to be the next, you know, sports capital of the world, or, you know, the next manufacturing place. If the will of the elected body says that's what we're going to do, that land use can transfer in there. I think the kind of logical pointers, though, of why Newberry wouldn't be the next Villages or the next Sumter County, it's kind of based on a lot of policies that are in place here in Alachua County. Keep in mind, if you build in the city of Newberry, you are still subject to a lot of the rules of Alachua County when it comes to groundwater recharge, aquifer recharge, stormwater management, and things like that. Alachua County is pretty known statewide for having some of the most restrictive policies, and that sort of carpet development, you know, I can tell you that I stood on the roof of a car one time with, my wife was there, Tripp and Christy were there, and literally I took a picture, panorama, and you could see every phase of construction, from clearing a lot to a foundation to framing to walls to drying in and a roof. I just don't ever see that here because there aren't those huge blocks of land, and there aren't people that are trying to capitalize on the rural small communities. They want to go out in the what I call greenfield areas where you can pick up 1,000, 3,000 acres and do that. And the restrictions in Alachua County for development and the carrying capacity just really isn't there. To do something like the Villages, they had to create their own form of government in a community development district. They had to bring in, you know, and create water systems, sewer systems. We're just not the scale that attracts that. I think that's more of like the Orlando to Tampa sort of connection, if you were to see that. And then you have to have somebody who wants to have that draw. Well, our great draw here is healthcare and quality of life, you know, because there are a lot of cultural and social and athletic things that happen here in Alachua County and Gainesville specifically. I don't think we have that kind of draw of being the next Villages. It's just, kind of hard to picture. Yeah.
Good question.
Mr. Thomas, what is our largest development right now?
Yeah, I believe the largest development we have on the books right now, it's actually under development, is Countryway in Newberry Town Center.
And how many
365 units, some cottages, some more standard single family on regular sized lots. I guess I would characterize this development as, for Newberry, it's a large scale development, but in terms of something on the scale of the Villages, it's a very tiny development. The Villages was always conceived to become what it is, and you know, this is more of a one-off development type pattern. There is no intent, as Jerry mentioned. You know, the Villages had to be developed with a community development district, which creates its own form of government and funds the infrastructure. It's just a completely different animal, and so I don't see this as sort of the foot in the door for larger things. I see this as, you know, again, for Newberry, this is a large scale development, but in terms of being able to develop large scale retirement communities, it's, as he alluded to, the infrastructure, not so much water sewer infrastructure I'm talking about, but the land infrastructure isn't there to support that large scale. You don't have the thousands of acres that are potential development sites for that kind of a development.
One of the things mentioned in the applicant's presentation that stuck out, because I was not born in Newberry, but I've lived here since 2006. And my parents moved here before I did because they wanted this small town living. They didn't want to live in Gainesville. They didn't want to live in Pinellas County, and they didn't want snow. So that people are going to be drawn to this potential new development because they like living in a smaller community. And I guess my concern, when you talk about even over 20 years, 900 houses, is that even if you average a person and a half per house or two, that's somewhere between 1,300 and 1,800 people, which for a town of 6,500 is a larger impact than it seems. So I guess my concern is the impact on a development like this, even though from the report, it doesn't stress our sewage, it doesn't stress our water or our electrical grid, but would it stress the town? Question?
Yeah. My answer is no, I don't think it does, because I think what happens, you know, you can have two types of growth. You can have a very imbalanced and spot growth that happens 100 at a time, 200 at a time, and you don't really have an overall plan for the consistent strategic upgrades to water, sewer, the roadway system. And I think in many ways that communities are better to have a master plan community that's worked on by the planners, the public works director, the city manager, and all doing it, versus somebody coming in and saying, I'm going to get 90 acres, and on 90 acres, I'm going to get 3 units an acre, and I'm going to prop 270 right there, and it's just its own thing. And so when Brian talked about the idea of kind of like piecemeal, if you talk about bringing, you know, 1,300 to 1,800 people to a city that has 6,500 today, where's Newberry going to be in 20 years from now? If your growth rate here hovers somewhere between 8 to 12%, kind of consistent with Alachua County, by the time that development gets up to 1,000 or 1,500 people, Newberry is probably going to be knocking on the door of 8 or 10,000. And so you're talking about, you know, 1 in 10 persons is a retirement person that's living in there. So the community is going to grow probably faster than that development or that proposed development would grow. And the offerings and the things that the community needs today, like a pediatrician and an eye doctor and those sorts of things, they're going to come online. And I think, again, to somewhat be an advocate for planned growth, when people know that the community is strategically looking at creating something like this, then the orthopedics start thinking, well, we need to go put our office in Newberry, and we need to bring 25 jobs to Newberry and serve that population. It's better to be planned and strategic than it is to be piecemeal. So that's kind of my idea. You know, the population's going to rise one way or the other. It's better to be strategic about it so that people can respond and say, I'm going to open up my restaurant here. I'm going to put my next restaurant there. I'm going to put my next service business in that community because its population is growing. Heck, Mr. Walker may bring an office out here full time.
Madam Chair. You know, just to add on to that, because I think that's always the question, right? That's always the question. If this development, if this change, if this big piece of commercial comes in, you know, what's going to happen? Can we handle it? And I think that the applicant was spot on. I mean, we always seem to have a false choice that, well, we could say no to this development and everything will stay the same. And that's just not true. We had the same question when it came to the fairgrounds. You know, that neighborhood said, I don't want the fairgrounds there. And in their minds, it was, well, if we say no to the fairgrounds, then it will always stay an equestrian center. When in reality, it was zone commercial. If you say no to the fairgrounds, something else is going to happen there eventually, and it may be the back of a Walmart. And you may dislike a constant trucks coming into the back of a Walmart much more than you dislike a fairground that happens once, you know, or twice a year. I think the same analogy is applicable here. Something is going to happen in that area of town. It's in our urban services area. It's right on 26. Something is going to happen. It's just a matter of whether it happens 100 acres, 90 acres, 75 acres, or whether it happens in a contiguous way. And I know that we get hung up on this number of units, but you know, if I do the math, and I don't do math, so I may have this wrong, over the course of their life, they're going to be putting up about 50 a year, which is a little bit slower rate than what the Northfleet development does out of the town center. And we absorb that, and we have 5-year, 10-year, 15, and 20-year strategic plans in this city. We are planning with FDOT on roads. We're planning on treatment facilities. We're planning with FMPA on our electric needs. I mean, we are planning for all of these aspects of this growth. That's why we pay Brian the exorbitant salary that we pay him to make sure that we can handle the rate of growth that we're in. So I don't, you know, he stated it much more articulately than I am now, but I want to make sure that we understand saying no to one development doesn't mean that stays farmland or 5-acre tracts in perpetuity. It just means that you lose the planned development that is very clearly wanting to work with the neighborhood and wanting to be flexible, and you open the door to an unknown development later on that may not be anywhere near as willing to say, yeah, you're right. That's a beautiful oak tree and I like it. Yeah, you're right. That's a historic home and I like it. It may be someone who's developing 40 acres at a time and is not as willing to work with the community. So I just want to make sure we understand that, you know, this isn't a either or choice. It's a now planned or something else hodgepodge later.
Madam Chair. A question for the applicant. You worked with us, Jerry, on the State Road 26 corridor project. Remember that a few years back? And we looked at all these properties and I think it was our strategic plan that we would try to develop that into commercial industrial and avoid becoming a large scale residential buildup along that corridor. How does this fit in with what we planned back in those years?
Well, good question, Madam Chair. I think it fits in because we did work with the city of Newberry years ago, and we worked with the Economic Development Committee, the EDC, and we worked with the city to help amend its comprehensive plan and land development code to bring economic opportunity there. The north side of the road, I don't know if you all have ever seen the document, I should have brought a copy of it, is our articulated drawing of what the community wanted in the form of an agricultural technology park on the north side. I was telling that to Ms. London out on the porch and others that we're seeing out there, Mr. Kaysen, that, you know, again, I feel kind of bad, you know, I'm 55 and older. So if I wanted to live there and I wanted to work for the University of Florida or IFAS and work across the street there, it could play together. But I don't see, to Mr. Conrad's question, I don't see that it is in conflict. It's another way to create diversity in the housing stock. If somebody doesn't want to live in a neighborhood that would have a lot of kids or might have a variety of, you know, smaller houses and wanted to live in a place that was more uniform, they could still, you know, live and work in the community. And I don't think it takes away too much, because we really looked spatially, to Mr. Conrad's point, as we looked at, you know, opportunities for where more industrial could go. The north side of the road is really much better suited for industrial because there are mines on the north side. There's, you know, lime rock and heavy industry that happens over there. So if an agricultural tech park were designed, it's better on the north side. I definitely see the best quadrant for Newberry for residential development is what I would call the southeast quadrant from State Road 26 around to 2741 where the schools are, because that's kind of closer to the town. If you get too far to the southwest quadrant, you're tripping over into Gilchrist County there. And then in the northwest, you know, there's still very active farming there. Going north, you know, you've got Watson and you've got heavier construction there. And again, you're up near the concrete batch plant. So I don't think that this conflicts or closes the door at all on the opportunity of Newberry to land that agricultural tech park or create more of an economy. It's bringing a diversification in housing form to the community.
And one more follow-up, if I may, Madam Chair. Is there a developer involved in this project, or is this looks like it's an application by 3 local families who kind of made a consortium to rezone their land? But is there anybody with development plans, or are they just going to sell?
No. Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. There is a developer involved, and the developer that we are working for and representing, this is what they do. They build retirement communities, and it's built on the idea of what they call cold weather marketing of saying, I think you said it, Madam Chair. There are folks that, you know, live in the Michigan, you know, Minnesota, Connecticut, those areas, and they don't want to be in the snow, and they want to have that, well, albeit tonight it's cold, but the rest of the year pretty warm. And so, yes, focusing on this, we have a
Can you tell us who that developer is, or is that?
Yes, absolutely. The name of the company is American Retired Communities. American Retirement Communities. Sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, they are the contract purchasers of the property. And as we discussed, there are a half dozen heirs to the former farm.
Yeah. So I'm, you know, right now, these detailed questions we're asking, we'll probably have to ask the developer when he gets involved. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more chances to look at this project.
He would have been here tonight, but he is with his 96-year-old father and said, should I be there tonight? And I said, I think I'd spend my time with the 96-year-old father. We'll do the best for you, and you can be at a future meeting.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to comment. Member Conrad beat me to it. I was also thinking about the corridor study that was done, I guess that's probably about 5 years ago now. And one of the key concepts that came out of that was the commission's desire to grow from within and in a logical fashion. And I think if you, as Jerry alluded to, if you look at the different quadrants and you look at the available land, it would actually be difficult to find a more suitable parcel than this for this type of development. or any type of residential development, but specifically something like this, where you have a large enough block that you can do the planned community, but at the same time, it's not a massive parcel as well, but it's close in, it's directly adjacent to water and wastewater, it's got state road access. It would be difficult to find a parcel better suited, I think, than this one, this close into the urban core of Newberry.
Just remember, we were concerned about the rapid residential growth, and our effort, I think, in that the planning process was to try to bring in along this 26 corridor more industry, ag tech type industry. And hopefully as we keep the residential kind of in the center core, and as we get farther up the road or farther east on 26, we can continue to try to zone some of that, as we have with the Davis property, into ag tech park kind of zoning rather than high density residential.
Convince me if I'm wrong. I thought that this planned development had commercial on the front on 26, which I think is in line with the commission's vision for the corridor. I think what our main concern is there that came out of that corridor study was we don't want to be subdivisions and never know when you've left Gainesville and you've entered Newberry. We want farmland. We want to preserve that State Road 26 for commercial developments. But this is inside the urban services core. This would be out. That study looked at Newberry from the curve to the city limit, and it looked for pockets where commercial could come in and large areas. This is inside the urban services core, so this is kind of outside of the nature of that study. So I understand and I agree, and I think the commission still wants to preserve State Road 26 for commercial development, jobs, those kinds of things. But I think that study was looking at Newberry to Jonesville, and this is inside the urban services area. So I think just wanted to make that point.
Board Member Johnson, do you have any questions?
I would just like to say that I think that the applicant did a great job. I have a high level of confidence in Jerry and his ability to make these kind of plans and to produce something that is of the quality that we expect and we hope to deliver to the city of Newberry. I think that, to the point Mayor Marlowe just made, that one thing we may be forgetting or we've overlooked in some of the discussion tonight is that the front of the development does have a place for commercial property. And I think that's something that's important, and that's something that's different than a lot of the residential developments we've approved in the last few years. So I think that's a positive and something to keep in mind when we make a decision. But I think it's exciting to see diversity like this coming to Newberry, and we've talked a lot about a grocery store wanting to look at our city as a home, and this versus a lot of the projects that we've looked at in the last 12 months. I think this is what it takes to get there. So I'm encouraged by the application.
Does the board have any other questions? At this point, the final argument can be made by the applicant.
I'm not really an arguer, but I certainly hope that you listen to the testimony, even though, this is a legislative matter. Listen to the testimony and the direction that we put forward this evening, the professional recommendations that your staff have brought forward, and the fact that I think the mayor underscored, thank you for that, about our willingness to work collectively with the neighbors. We don't want to change places. We want places to have change that they want. And so if it comes to meeting with Miss Michelle or meeting with Miss London, we're the type of people that will work at that level, property by property or fence line by fence line, to try to achieve the best thing for the community, so that the change that ultimately happens as communities grow and as we mature as cities happens in the right way. So we would appreciate your support. And, we're always a phone call away. If something's not going right, call us and we'll hit the correct wheel and we'll swing it back into the order, but we're here to stay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, staff can make their final argument.
Madam Chair, the main thing I think to remember is, and this is a comprehensive plan amendment change to plan development, and the plan development future land use category allows for residential, commercial, recreation, public use, that kind of thing. So the question is whether that land use category is appropriate at this location to allow those types of uses. And then the next hearing after this, when you consider rezoning, will be when you have an opportunity to put more specific conditions on the development or talk about specifics as to buffers and those kinds of things. So.
If the city attorney will advise us on the applicable law and the factual findings for this.
Madam Chair, this item is a little different than the previous items in that we've had expert testimony from the applicant, Jerry Diedenbach, as was noted earlier, is an AICP planner and has testified as to his expertise many times in the city previously. Of course, his compadre with CHW, Ryan Thompson, filed the application. So I believe Ryan may be in the audience this evening based upon Jerry's presentation, but certainly his application is in the record as well. So not only do we have Wendy and Brian, but we have other expert testimony that's before you this evening. As Mayor Conrad stated a little while ago, we're kind of at a 30,000 foot view of this particular matter at this stage. And as Wendy just noted, as we get down to ground level, and when we start looking at the rezoning of the particular property, and we look at the development agreement that will be necessitated as part of this development, we will be looking at a lot of detail. The lighting, directional lighting, as Jerry noted earlier, the technology that has come a long ways just in the last few years as to the intensity of the lighting, street lights. Now that we have LED lights, it's a much different scenario. The sidewalks, the buffering, and a lot of the other things that we'll be looking at once we go forward with this particular project, if the commission determines that this is the appropriate land use for this particular area. But we'll certainly be looking at a lot of those items in the future with respect to this project, if you decide to go forward and approve it this evening, Madam Chair.
I have a question to clarify that before we get to a motion and deliberate. So I don't know if it's for the city attorney or for staff though. The item we're considering for vote really is about whether this is consistent with our land development regulations and growth, and if it's consistent with the properties around it, correct? Even though they gave us information about the development.
Madam Chair, you just said it a lot more succinctly than I did. So
I'm not sure I understand what I'm saying, though. So we're just,
that is correct.
they gave us information about the development. That is,
Let's be open to the next item on the agenda.
yeah. So it's about what is consistent with the properties, and okay. I guess I answered my own question, but I didn't know I was going to. So do we have a motion? Do we need further deliberation?
Madam Chair.
I'd like to move that we recommend to the city commission that they pass comprehensive plan adjustment 2102.
I'd second.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Yes, the second from Gavin.
So we have a motion by Mayor Conrad and a second by Board Member Johnson. Are there any deliberations from the board on this item? We will now go to public comment. The phone number to call in to provide public comment on this item is up on your screen. When you call in, you can press 9 to raise your hand to let us know you have comment on this item. There's a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you are seeing on your screen. So we're giving you ample opportunity to call in if you have a comment. If you are in the room, you're free also to come up and comment at the microphone.
Madam Chair.
Are there any phone calls?
Madam Chair, nobody has their hand raised.
Okay. We will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Conrad,
Aye.
Board Member Urched, aye. The motion passes 4-0. She's It was. We will now move on to item number 7. We have not gained any new members, and it is tied to item number 6. So we will have the city attorney read the ordinance into the record.
Madam Chair, this is ordinance number 2021-7, LDR 21-05, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to the rezoning of approximately 289 acres, contiguous acres, more or less, pursuant to an application by the property owner of said acreage, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from the agricultural A zoning district to the planned development PD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida. Tax parcels number 01927-000-000, 01932-000-000, and tax parcel number 01933-002-000, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, the appropriate motion at the appropriate time is to pass ordinance number 2021-07 LDR 21-05. Upon its reading by title only, you can deny the measure or continue it to a date certain in the future.
And once again, so first a question, never mind. We will go to ex parte communication. Board Member Johnson,
I have none.
Board Member Woodcock, I think you have to recuse yourself from this one too, even though you requested it on the previous one. So if you could state for the record that you're recusing yourself. For this item.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Mayor Conrad.
What do we, ex parte, no.
Board Member Urched.
The same expert, I had conversations on Facebook forum, discussion, and as per the advice of legal, screenshotted that thread and emailed the city directly with it.
And I also had communication, the same as number 6, and it has not affected my ability to make a decision in this case. So we will now move to the staff overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This request is to amend the official zoning atlas by changing the zoning from agriculture to planned development on the 289 acres that we just discussed. This property, the next slide, it's again, we know where this location is, but we also know that You just talked about a large scale plan amendment. And if you go to the next slide. So in other words, you just approved a recommendation for the commission to change the future land use map of our comprehensive plan. And that's the first step. And then now you'll consider rezoning the property. So if you think of it as like the Constitution and how laws implement that Constitution. In this case, we have our comprehensive plan and future land use map, and then we have our zoning and our zoning map or zoning regulations that implement our comprehensive plan. So that's the step you're taking now. And the applicant can go over their application. They are asking for the specifics as a part of your plan development rezoning would have a development order attached to your approval through that ordinance. And that development order would also have a master plan associated with the approval. So down the road, that master plan and those conditions of that development order are what is followed and complied with in order to develop that property. For example, there's an area shown on the master plan for residential, an area shown for commercial. If there's a maximum number of single family dwelling units of 900 and a maximum of 70,000 square feet of commercial, for example, and then talk about phasing and buffering and details as far as providing for utilities and that kind of thing. So, and then eventually also consideration of a development agreement, which can be additional requirements between the city and the applicant and the owner to provide for certain kinds of improvements, infrastructure, road improvements, or utility improvements, that kind of thing. So with that, I'm sure the applicant is ready to talk about their application.
Thank you very much. If the applicant will step forward and give their presentation.
Well, good evening again, Madam Chair. Jerry Diedenbach, CHW. And I was going to say, in keeping my promise to Brian to make sure he gets all his agenda items tonight, it's rare when we ever talk about an application and there are not a lot of questions that deal with zoning, like light pollution, fences, buffering, and things like that. So I would say, in the interest of time, that the applicant will rest his presentation based on the competent substantial evidence put forward during the land use, also by your professional staff, by their PowerPoint and our PowerPoint. If you have any additional questions, we're certainly happy to answer them. But what I was going to suggest that we would do is rest on all the discussion we've had for the last hour or so. And between now and the City Commission, I'm sure that Janine or Brian can help get us in touch with Miss London and Miss Michelle, who called on the phone, so that we can actually get our application and modify it a little before we go to the City Commission to include things like dark sky standards in there, or perhaps, excuse me, meet with Miss London, at her property, or Miss Michelle, to see what those concerns were so that we could incorporate those into the actual final zoning document. We'd be happy to do that. Yeah, well, we try. Yeah, we try to do right then.
We're going to go through the process still, because that's what we do here. No. So is there an additional staff report and recommendation for us on this?
Yes, Madam Chair, the recommendation that staff provides in their presentation and their PowerPoint, which is coming up on the screen any moment. So this is, again, you see the map, you see the outline of the property, the rezoning request to go to Plan Development Zoning District, which has attached conditions and a master plan. The next slide provides the recommendation of staff that it is based on the applicant's justification report included in their application, going through all of the level of service, concurrency, the land use, the compatibility, the comprehensive plan, the zoning requirements and compatibility, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend to the City Commission approval of the ordinance 2021-07 to approve application LDR 2105, contingent upon approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, which was ordinance 2021-06. And that concludes staff's report.
The CPA was 2102.
Okay, there's no third-party interveners, so we'll move to public comment. If you have public comment, please call the number on your screen. When you enter the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand to let us know you have a comment on this item. There is a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you are seeing on YouTube and Zoom. So we will give you time to call in to raise your concerns about this item.
Madam Chair, David Dale would like to make a comment.
Okay. Have they been previously sworn in? Okay.
Yes, I have been sworn in previously.
Please go ahead.
Yes. Since right now it is just a rezoning application, I guess my question is towards the board. As the applicant, assuming this is approved, as the applicant moves forward on the master plan, which will probably be in multiple stages, will there be public hearings and public comment periods during that process also?
Brian, can you answer that? We'll answer that when we get back to the, are there any additional public comments?
Madam Chair, if you want me to tackle that one, I'm happy to do so. Yes, there will be
Okay, at this point,
multiple.
the applicant may cross-examine.
I don't know if you could hear me, Madam Chair, but yes, there will be multiple public hearings.
Again, I'll defer to the lead on this project, Wendy.
I can't hear what you're requesting, and can you repeat what you're requesting? Also, the city attorney is trying to make a comment as well.
We have an unexplained right now.
I don't like that, but you can close the whole thing out. I mean, try turning it on and off. The only thunder going back there is where we had our chocolate.
Gavin, if
Yes.
Sunday and Monday got into a fight, who would win?
Sunday and Monday got into a fight. You've stumped me on the question.
All right, do the thing with the eyes there. Make sure he's not. Dallas just hit his head. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you, Gavin, since you're a dad, you need these things. Sunday,
Okay.
of course, because Monday is a week day.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Oh my gosh, save us from these bad jokes. Sorry for the delay. There was an unexplained beeping behind us, and thankfully Dallas took care of it, even though he might have injured himself. So if you could go ahead and do both your cross-examine and answer the question about the procedure, Miss Wendy.
Are you talking about the question that the member of the public asked?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I did hear that. I didn't hear whatever else was discussed. There is a process once you, as part of approving your rezoning, You are approving a master plan and a set of conditions that govern that project. And then the project comes through and asks for, that's a preliminary master plan, a preliminary development plan. It gets approved as a part of this, which is just these pods of color that show generally where the residential and commercial will be in a rough main road going through, as you saw on the screen when the applicant showed you. And then it will go through a process after that. When each phase comes in to get a final development plan, it does go through a hearing process, public notice process, so you are able to contribute and have an effect on that, and especially with this developer to be able to have an impact on what's being done. To answer the question, as far as cross-examining, I don't think staff has anything at this time. We don't.
And Attorney Walker, did you have a question or a comment?
No, ma'am, I think Wendy covered it very well. Thank you, though.
Thank you, sir. Now, if the board has any questions. For the staff, the applicant.
I'll ask a question to the
You're
app.
muted, Gavin.
Let's see, I'm unmuted.
We can hear you.
I'll ask a question for the applicant, but before I do, I want to make sure that we thank the folks from the public that showed up to voice their concerns and encourage them to stay involved through the process, because this is the first meeting of many that will happen for this project. And, you know, without you all staying involved and giving your opinion, it's more difficult to make sure that it's a satisfactory project for everyone. So, you know, show up and make sure that you stay involved. But to Jerry, on page 296 of the application, and I think this kind of touches on the public question we had a second ago. Just looking at this overall plan, it shows the different areas where you'll have residential, non-residential, common open space. At what point in the process will the public and will the board have the opportunity to address the sizes of these pieces or where they sit? Or, for example, the commercial area at the front on this plan, it's only shown as 17 acres. You know, will we have an opportunity to talk about what you envision to sit on that 17 acres, or if it should be more or should be less? I think that to me answers the question that the member of public asked a few seconds ago.
Is that a question for the applicant or for staff?
For the applicant, that would be fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the answer to that question is, well, how shall I best state this? Let's talk about the commercial first, because I think that's the easiest portion. That is not designed to come into play until probably about halfway through. So if we were to divide the 289 acres into 10 pieces of about 28 acres a piece, and at a gross residential density of 2.5 units per phase, those areas, to P&Z member Johnson's questions, will occur sequentially from the north southerly into the property. And so I probably see us back here probably annually looking at preliminary plats, construction drawings, and final plats. And the shape of those are going to be very dependent on making sure that when we are connecting the roadways southerly and then laterally with water and sewer lines, that we're building logical connections. So I kind of see this as there'll probably be an annual revisiting. You know, about every 10 to 12 months, we'll be probably coming in with a phase and doing the fine tuning on those connection points and sidewalks and, you know, trails, water and sewer like that. But the overall master plan, you know, it's going to be very predicated on where the low areas are, because that defines where stormwater goes. So, you know, I pretty much see us being here annually. Yeah.
All right.
Other questions from the board?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend that the City Commission approve Land Development Regulation 2105 contingent upon the approval of CPA 21-02.
We have a motion and a second for this action. I actually have a question as we move into deliberations. So my question is, this is to change the zoning. There's no, will it be a subsequent hearing to do the PDRR on it? Like when they give out that describes what they're going to do with the property? Is that part of with the plat? Do you understand what I'm asking? Do I understand what I'm asking? Like when we had, when I think it was in conjunction with the Canterbury stuff, there had been a document that described what was going to be done for some of that property, and they were changing the aspects of. So will something like that come before us again? Will it come in conjunction with the plat and the phase? Okay. Are there any other deliberations from the board on this item? So we will move to public comment. We will be putting up the number for you to call in momentarily on your screen. You can call in the number to provide your comment on this item. When you get into the meeting, please press 9 to raise your hand to let us know you have a comment on this item. There is a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you are seeing on YouTube or Zoom. So we're giving you plenty of opportunity to call in to raise your concerns. Are there any callers?
No, ma'am.
So we have a motion on the floor by Mayor Conrad and a second by Board Member Urched. We'll go to a roll call vote. Bless you. Board Member Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Conrad?
Aye.
Board Member Urched?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Item 6 and item 7 will be heard on March 8th, 2021 in front of Board of Adjustment or Commission? Commission. We will move to item number 11, which is to set date for a workshop on potential revisions to the city landscaping requirements.
Madam Chair, that item is, are you ready for staff presentation or I can't?
We're gonna leave it until
Is there a presentation on this?
Can you hear me? Hello?
We do though.
Madam Chair. This.
Madam Chair, basically, in the past, staff have been asked to, about landscaping standards that we currently have, and had expressed an interest in having a workshop or discussion on those standards. And so we wanted to go ahead and take this opportunity to ask the board to schedule a workshop where we can go ahead and do that. Prior to the workshop, staff will provide a number of background information pages to look at in preparation for it. We'll compare other local area standards. Probably not nearly as thick as that, but we could do more because there's a lot written about landscaping. But basically, it would be a discussion on where our standards are now and where the board would like to see the standards move to. And so we can do it this month, we can do it next month, but we've kind of put it off a little bit because there's just a volume of activity going on, but we wanted to get it back in front of the board and go ahead and ask the board to schedule that. Or when the board's available so that we can schedule it.
I had a question, Madam Chair, before we, it seems to me like it might be better to put this on an agenda as a presentation so that staff has the opportunity to say, this is where we are. And then we ask the question after that presentation, okay, does the board feel a need to change? Because a lot of the times when we talk about landscaping LDRs, I think we see one development in particular, and we think, well, I wish they had done that. And so we bring up a larger conversation. But then when we look at what our standards really are, we think, well, actually, that's a pretty good standard. So, you know, scheduling a workshop would have to necessitate that sort of background education anyway. I think it's difficult to get people to turn out to workshops right now. So if we do want to have a workshop, I would suggest we push it to when we think that we can gather live to encourage people to come, especially for landscaping. I'm seeing big sort of blown up pictures around so people can visualize what you're trying to say, what you're promoting. But I think before we get to scheduling a workshop, we should put it on a presentation, give staff, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to say, this is the standard that we have now. I think the application we just heard, 21% of the land mass staying in green space, that's a pretty high number. So I just think it might be good to have the presentation before we have a workshop and see if because a workshop, you're looking at an hour or two. Presentation, looking at 10, 15 minutes, and then you can make a decision if you want to have a workshop.
Me personally, I don't care as long as I can zoom in on it. I don't care when you have it, but
from staff's perspective, it's the will of the board. We're happy to go whatever direction you want.
Does this need like a motion and?
A simple direction would suffice.
I'm happy with what Mayor Marlowe said. Put a blurb on one of the meetings.
Find a nice meeting where we only have one or two things. Stick it on that meeting, and then at the end of that presentation. So now that we all know where we're at, do we feel a workshop is necessary? Because we're going to suggest to the commission that we think that they should change it.
If it keeps getting pushed off, I'd put it on the next meeting.
I was going to say, depending on how far we get tonight, depends on how much we have on the agenda for next month. So
I think we got a big meeting coming next week.
Okay.
The next item is to change the July meeting date due to the Monday, July 5th date being the observed holiday for the July 4th holiday. Is the proposal to move it to Tuesday? Longest meeting ever on my birthday. That was my birthday present. It could be your birthday present too. Are there thoughts? Is anyone opposed besides board member Urchad from having it on Tuesday, July the 6th?
Tuesday's good with me.
Do we need a motion and a vote on this?
Madam Chair, I move to move the 4th of July meeting to Tuesday, the 6th of July.
Is there a second on the motion?
A second.
And I think Gavin seconded too. There's a motion and a second to move the July 5th meeting date to July 2nd. Roll call vote. Oh, wait, do we need a public comment? Oh, we need public comment on this because we're voting. So we're going to put the number up on the screen so that you can call in if you would like us to meet on July 6th instead of July the 5th. There's a 30-second delay between what is on Zoom and the meeting, so we're giving you time to call in and voice your concerns. Are there any callers? Roll call vote. Board Member Johnson.
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock.
Aye.
Mayor Conrad.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Urched.
Nay.
And the motion passes 4-1.
Madam Chair, I move to continue items 8, 9, and 10 until the next meeting.
There's a motion to continue 8, 9, and 10 until
Second.
the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
I do have a question on the motion, Madam Chair. Will there, I'm sorry, my packet's a little jumbled here. Never mind. No, I didn't. Thank you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. The 3 items that are being moved are streamlined administrative approval for accessory structures and rear yard setbacks, food truck ordinance, and a block party ordinance. All 2 at least, which will probably have robust conversation, but we will go to public comment. The number is on your screen. You can call in if you wish to comment on this item. When you get into the meeting, you can press 9 to raise your hand to let us know that you have a comment on this item that we're voting on. There's a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you're seeing on YouTube and Zoom, so we're giving you opportunity to call in. Is your head okay, Dallas? Is your head okay? Are there any callers? Roll call vote. Board Member Johnson.
Aye.
Board Member Woodcock.
Aye.
Mayor Conrad.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Urched.
Aye.
And the motion passes 5-0 to table those 3 items. Next on the agenda, topics for members for discussion. Board Member Johnson.
I have nothing.
Board Member Woodcock.
Nothing.
City Attorney Walker.
Nothing to comment on, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Mayor Conrad. Board Member Urched.
No, Madam Chair.
I can't remember mine. Mayor Marlowe.
Real brief, I know it's getting late. I did want to let the P&Z board members know that the commission asked for a conversation about compensation for P&Z, a discussion. And while we will carry that conversation over into the budget, they did want to pass along their gratitude. The P&Z the last few months has been a very demanding. You know, you guys have gotten packets that look like this to read through. You had some pretty late meetings, and they do want you guys to know that they have been watching how hard this volunteer position has become recently, and that they appreciate it. When I look at a packet like this, I'm reminded that it may be better to ask staff to give us, you know, a 1-page summary for each item, and then a link to this kind of material, so we're not printing off all of this. And then obviously any board member who wants paper copies we would do that for you. But if you're more of a digital person, you can just say to staff, you know, we want the link and the files, and if we need maps and stuff, we'll send those questions to you. So that may be something for you guys to consider as we move forward. That might be a little bit nicer on the printing costs, and for you as board members to just have, here's a summary of this item, here's a summary of this item, and here's the link to the backup material. I think it may, I heard that we've got 4 other agenda items already planned for March. 2 of the things that we tabled, I agree with, it's getting late, but I agree with the chair. Those are going to be, could potentially be fairly robust conversations. I might ask staff to look at potentially having another meeting. If some of these are just discussion items, we might get a little leeway out of Scott in terms of being able to zoom in on them. But to avoid having these meetings that go till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, while we are in the middle of this onslaught, board may prefer to break it up into 2 meetings in a month instead of having longer single meetings. So those are my thoughts. I did want to pass on the commission's gratitude, and I'd ask staff to kind of think about how much we can put on a file, a digital file, a link that we send out, and how much we really need to print off. And that's it for me, Madam Chair.
And if I could add one more thing, Jessica, I just want to say our thoughts and prayers go out to Commissioner Coleman as he is very ill, and his family as well. And, just pass along to him if I don't know if anybody talks to Marcy, but just pass along our condolences. Tell him we miss him. Hope to see him back soon.